Hello everyone, I know you watched this video to accompany you to sleep. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to tell me where you are from and what time you watched this video. Let's jump straight into the story. Story 1. At 9 a.m. on April 18, 1990, a middle-aged woman named Hisako Iguchi hurriedly walked into the Tokyo Police Department, Japan, with a worried look on her face. She urgently reported that her daughter, who had gone on an overseas trip, was now unreachable. With a trembling voice, she begged the police to quickly help find her daughter. According to Ms. Hisako, the missing person was Mariko Iguchi, a senior college student. Mariko had recently traveled to Taiwan and was scheduled to return to Japan on April 18th. Ms. Hisako had gone to the airport to meet her daughter that day, but waited for hours without seeing her. After checking, she learned that the flight had landed on time, with no delays. This realization made the mother's heart sink, fearing something terrible had happened to her daughter. The police immediately began investigating after receiving the report. They found that Mariko had neither canceled nor changed her pre-booked flight. But she hadn't boarded the plane that day, and there was no record of her entering Japan. In other words, Mariko never returned home. Ms. Hisako continued to tell the police that she had lost contact with her daughter on April 7th. Mariko was a sensible child who had never traveled far alone before. So before departing, the mother and daughter had agreed that Mariko would send a postcard home every day to report her safety once she arrived in Taiwan. The last postcard Ms. Hisako received was on April 7th, after which she received no more. Initially, Ms. Hisako thought her daughter might have been having too much fun to write, until Mariko didn't board her scheduled flight back to Japan, making her realize something had gone wrong. The police examined the postcards Mariko had written to her mother, 5 in total. Through their content, they learned that on April 3rd had toured Taipei. On April 4th, she took a train south to Tainan City and spent 2 days sightseeing there. The last postcard, dated April 7th, mentioned her continuing south to Kaohsiung City. This was the final information the family received from her. After that, Mariko completely lost contact. Mariko Iguchi was 23 years old, born in Tokyo. Her parents had divorced when she was very young, and she had always lived with her mother. Her mother, Ms. Hisako, was an insurance salesperson. Despite facing a busy and tiring job, Ms. Hisako always showered her daughter with love. In return, Mariko was always an obedient and understanding girl. She studied diligently, consistently achieving excellent results, becoming a great source of pride and comfort for her mother. Entering the prestigious Akanamazu Women's University in Tokyo, Mariko quickly made an impression on those around her. Her cute appearance and lively, friendly personality helped her easily win the affection of friends and teachers. 4 years of college passed in the blink of an eye, bringing Mariko to the threshold of a new life. While her classmates were busy choosing graduation thesis topics, Mariko had long had her own plans. After many discussions with her mother, she decided to take a graduation trip to Taiwan. Her purpose was not just sightseeing, but also to experience the local customs firsthand, from which she would write a unique and insightful thesis. With excitement and full of hope, Mariko set off, unaware that this pivotal trip would turn into a horrifying nightmare. After receiving the report, Tokyo police contacted Taiwanese police through Interpol, hoping they could assist in finding the missing Mariko. Upon receiving the request, Taiwanese police immediately began their investigation. They first checked immigration records. Mariko had arrived in Taiwan on April 2nd, but there was no record of her leaving the country. According to Taiwan Railway records, Mariko had boarded a train from Tainan to Kaohsiung at 11 a.m. on April 7th and arrived in Kaohsiung around noon. With this information, the police decided to focus their search efforts in Kaohsiung. They launched a widespread campaign, posting missing person notices throughout the city. The posters described Mariko Iguchi in detail, a 23-year-old Japanese girl, 5 feet tall, with short hair, wearing black-rimmed glasses, and with a small mole at the left corner of her mouth. Mariko's mother in Tokyo couldn't wait any longer. She flew to Taiwan and distributed flyers to passers-by, desperately wanting to find her daughter. However, in a short time, she received no useful leads. She could only return to Japan to await the results of the police investigation. As the missing person was a foreigner, the case attracted close attention from local residents. People began to speculate about Mariko's fate. Some believed she might have fallen victim to human traffickers. Others thought that Mariko, with her pure beauty and characteristic youthful naivety, could have become a target for criminals. They imagine a heartbreaking scenario, the young girl being lured by sweet talk, then forced to work in red light districts or other depraved places. They speculated that her disappearance might also be related to criminal gangs. The mysterious disappearance of Mariko Iguchi quickly became the focus of media attention. Major news outlets continuously updated information, offering analyses and hypotheses about the fate of the young woman. The story of the Japanese student who suddenly vanished during her trip to Taiwan spread like wildfire, causing a stir in both countries. Pressure mounted on the police. With few clues, they were forced to expand their investigation, focusing on entertainment establishments in Kaohsiung, where Mariko was last believed to have been. They hoped to find traces of her in these places. However, after days and nights of investigation, the police still couldn't obtain any significant leads. Just then, a glimmer of hope appeared when a woman approached the police. She claimed to be a psychic and said she had used her special abilities to see Mariko's fate. According to this woman, Mariko might have been murdered and her body dumped in a lake or the sea. With this lead from the psychic, police focused their attention on Qingqing Lake, a famous artificial lake in Kaohsiung located between Tianjin and Linya districts. Based on this theory, police sent a team to search the lake. However, apart from pulling up some animal carcasses and trash, they found no traces related to Mariko. Just as the investigation seemed to hit a dead end, a man named Lee from Tainan approached the police and provided an important clue. He said that on April 4th, he had met Mariko near Tainan Station. She looked rushed as if lost. Mr. Lee, seeing this, proactively approached to ask if she needed help. After chatting, he learned she was a tourist from Japan. To save money, Mariko had asked Mr. Lee if he knew of any cheap hostels nearby. Upon hearing this, the kind-hearted Mr. Lee offered to let her stay at his home, as he happened to have a spare bedroom. Mariko happily agreed. For the next 2 days, Mr. Lee not only provided free accommodation, but also became an enthusiastic tour guide for Mariko. On his motorcycle, he took her to explore many famous tourist spots in Tainan, sharing stories about local history and culture. From Mr. Lee's account, it seemed Mariko had thoroughly enjoyed her time in Tainan, always smiling and excited about every new experience. After staying at Mr. Lee's house for 2 nights, Mariko planned to leave Tainan to continue south to Kaohsiung. On the morning of April 7th, Mr. Lee drove her on his motorcycle to Tainan Station and watched her enter the station. Mr. Lee described Mariko as a lively, cheerful girl who left a good impression, not only on him, but on his entire family. He asserted that throughout her stay, Mariko showed no signs of anything unusual and had a great time in Tainan. Before leaving, she even wrote down her home address in Japan, hoping they could keep in touch in the future. Mr. Lee then handed over to the police the address Mariko had written for him. After comparing the handwriting, they confirmed it was written by Mariko. With a serious and objective work attitude, the police expanded their investigation, interviewing not only Mr. Lee's family, but also the surrounding neighbors. The results were very consistent. Everyone confirmed Mr. Lee's statement was accurate. They affirmed seeing Mariko stay at Mr. Lee's house for 2 days before leaving. Many people emphasized that Mr. Lee was known for his kindness in the area, always ready to help others in need. The witnesses all agreed that Mr. Lee was trustworthy and would absolutely not do anything unethical. To prove his innocence, Mr. Lee told the police that before taking Mariko to the station on April 7th, he had bought her 2 bottles of water at a convenience store outside the station. He suggested that the store owner might remember them. Therefore, the police went to the convenience store Mr. Lee had mentioned. According to the store owner's memory, Mr. Lee had indeed bought water there that day. At that time, there was a beautiful young girl behind him, so the store owner remembered clearly. At this point, suspicions about Mr. Lee were dismissed. Now, the police theorized that after being treated well by Mr. Lee's family in Tainan, Mariko might have become too trusting of strangers' kindness. When she arrived in Kaohsiung, she might have been ready to accept help from unfamiliar people, unaware of the potential risks. In a situation lacking vigilance, Mariko could have become a target for those with ill intentions. As time passed, the investigation made no progress. Just when everyone thought this case would become a cold case, the police received an anonymous letter. The letter mentioned a taxi driver with strange behavior in Kaohsiung City. His car was covered with talismans, and he had placed several Buddha statues on the dashboard. During the time Mariko went missing, he had told passengers, "I know exactly where that girl is because I saw her last." The police immediately began investigating after receiving the anonymous letter. They quickly identified this taxi driver in Kaohsiung. To avoid alerting the suspect, the police deployed a sophisticated investigation strategy. A group of undercover investigators was sent to the taxi stand at Kaohsiung International Airport to gather information. This taxi driver's name was Lu Xiaocheng. His colleagues all described him as a very eccentric person. After Mariko's disappearance, he had repeatedly mentioned her whereabouts to people. Then, as if possessed, he had covered his car with talismans and even brought several Buddha statues from a temple to place in his car. Every day, he would say there was a female ghost following him to claim his life. Initially, when people heard Lu say these things, they thought he was just talking nonsense. But after seeing his strange behavior, they began to feel he might be telling the truth. People who haven't done bad things aren't afraid of ghosts knocking on their door. Therefore, everyone felt Lu was suspicious. According to the investigation, Lu Xiaochuan was 30 years old, the third child in his family, with 2 older sisters and a younger brother. He and his family used to live on Fijichong Road in Kaohsiung. But then his 2 sisters got married one after another. His parents divorced due to relationship issues. So his mother took the youngest brother away. His father remarried, leaving only him living alone in the old house. Although suspicions about Lu had arisen, the police remained cautious in their approach, not rushing to conclusions without sufficient evidence. Therefore, they decided to approach his mother to gather more information. She revealed that 6 months ago, her son had asked her for money to buy a new house. But she didn't have that much. Lu became very angry, threw a newspaper at her face, and said, "Do you see the missing woman in the newspaper? I killed her. I've already killed one person, so I don't mind killing another." When hearing such words, his mother didn't take it too seriously. She was used to these kinds of threats from her son. Because her son suffered from schizophrenia, acted impulsively, and had violent tendencies, she had left him to live alone in the old house. But a few days later, her son came to her again, saying that a headless female ghost in white was coming to claim his life. During that time, news about Mariko's disappearance was everywhere. She thought her son might have seen related news, triggering his mental illness, causing him to imagine Mariko's ghost haunting him. The police went to Lu's neighbors to gather more information. Some said he was a very strange person, often shouting alone in the house, as if agitated by something. He had a peculiar hobby of torturing cats and dogs. Those living nearby often saw him carrying a crossbow, which is a weapon that requires a permit to purchase, and no one knew where he got it from. Whenever he saw stray cats or dogs, he would use the crossbow to shoot them dead. Lu's unusual behaviors increased the police's suspicions, prompting them to conduct a direct interrogation. When facing the police, Lu showed clear signs of psychological instability. He appeared extremely nervous, unable to focus on answering questions coherently, and even exhibited aggressive behavior, attempting to attack the police. This behavior raised the question of whether he truly suffered from schizophrenia or was pretending to avoid suspicion. Recognizing the complexity and importance of the case, 2 months after Mariko's disappearance, the police decided to establish a special investigation team codenamed 0407 to continue searching for Mariko's whereabouts. They posted reward notices offering 50,000 new Taiwan dollars, approximately US $1,600, to anyone providing useful information. At the same time, Mariko's mother added her own reward of 500,000 Japanese yen, approximately $4,500. Not long after, the police received a tip claiming that Mariko had been murdered and her body buried in a cemetery in Shinshu District, Tainan City. The police quickly mobilized a large force to conduct a focused search in that area, but found nothing. During the investigation, whenever Mariko's mother had free time, she would fly to Taiwan to search for her daughter. She even established the Mariko Iguacha Search Support Association, believing that her daughter must have just gotten lost somewhere and was still alive. 8 months after the incident, the police increased the reward to 1 million new Taiwan dollars, approximately 32,000 US dollars, declaring they would definitely find Mariko, whether alive or dead. In January 1991, the police received another report. This time, someone said they had discovered a body in a sugar cane field in Huli District, Taichung City. The police went to the scene and found that the body's shape was very similar to Mariko's, but it was too decomposed to be identified. They compared the victim's teeth with Mariko's dental records, and the results showed they didn't match. It wasn't Mariko. 2 months later, another taxi driver provided the police with an important clue. He said he was a colleague of Lou's, and believed Lou was the killer. Previously, Lou had only put talismans and Buddha statues in his car, but now he was directly playing the Great Compassion mantra in his car. Every day, Lou didn't dare to go home and slept in his taxi. Even when going to the bathroom, he would quickly return to the car, as if something was always following him. This taxi driver told the police that perhaps if they searched Lou's house, they could find out the truth. The clue provided by this taxi driver was very important. But due to lack of evidence, the police couldn't request a search warrant from the court. Just as the case seemed to hit another dead end, one of Lu Xiuquan's neighbors voluntarily approached the police and said, recently at night, they often heard a woman's crying coming from Lu's house, sounding very miserable and chilling. This neighbor had gone to ask Lu about it, but unexpectedly, as soon as Lu heard this, he turned pale and was speechless. The neighbor felt something strange and, after much consideration, decided to tell the police about this. In March 1991, the police arrested Lu on suspicion of murder and searched his house. In an open area in the backyard, they found traces of burning. Next, the police checked the water meter of his house and discovered that in April 1990, the water usage had suddenly surged, increasing by 1,320 gallons compared to normal usage before. Lu Xiuquan lived alone, so such a dramatic increase in water usage was certainly unusual. Then, the police planned to excavate the area in the backyard. Before digging, an old police officer clasped his hands in prayer, mumbling, hoping that Mariko's spirit in heaven could guide them to find her body. Unexpectedly, just as he finished praying, he felt someone pat him hard on the shoulder. He was startled, thinking someone was playing a prank, but when he turned around, there was no one there. This made him even more convinced that Mariko's body must be buried under this piece of land. However, after a period of digging, they still found nothing. After being arrested, Lu Xiuquan's attitude was very arrogant. Whenever he was asked questions related to this case, he would curse terribly, saying the police were blind and wrongly accusing a good person. The police had grasped Lu Xiuquan's weakness of being very afraid of ghosts, so they continuously pressured him. Sure enough, not long after, he became scared and confessed to all his crimes. The circumstances of the crime were reconstructed as follows. On April 7, 1990, Lu Xiuquan, who had nothing to do at the time, was wandering around near Kaohsiung Station. Around noon, he saw Mariko alone carrying a finding her attractive. He approached to chat. When he learned she was Japanese, his interest grew even more. Through their conversation, Lu quickly realized that Mariko was completely unfamiliar with Kaohsiung. Seizing this opportunity, he offered to take her to Chongqing Lake, a famous scenic spot. This offer was made naturally, as if stemming from Lu's hospitality and free time. Mariko, with somewhat naive trust, happily accepted, perhaps thinking she had again met a kind local like her previous experiences. On the way to Chongqing Lake, the two seemed to have interesting and comfortable conversations. This cheerful and friendly atmosphere made Mariko feel at ease, unaware that she was approaching danger. When Lu learned that Mariko was still a college student, his desire grew stronger. As night fell, Mariko asked him if he knew of any cheap hotels, explaining that as a student, she didn't have much money. To lure her to his home, Lu lied, saying that hotels in Kaohsiung were different from other places and required reservations many days in advance. He conveniently mentioned that he had a spare room at home where she could stay for free. Mariko, unsuspecting, immediately accepted this kindness and followed him home. That evening, deliberately prepared a table full of food and bought a bottle of good wine to entertain Mariko. After several drinks, he began to reveal his true nature, attempting to get intimate with her, but was firmly rejected. Mariko angrily pushed him away and stood up, intending to leave immediately. Seeing her about to leave, Lu bowed his head and apologized, saying he had drunk too much. After his explanation, Mariko reluctantly stayed, but immediately went to the bedroom and locked the door. That night, became increasingly angry, believing Mariko was just pretending to be pure. Suddenly, an evil thought arose in his mind. In the early hours of the morning, he found the spare key to Mariko's bedroom, took his crossbow, and silently opened her door. Mariko was sound asleep. Lu approached the bed, aimed at her temple, and pulled the trigger. The young Mariko lost her life in her sleep. Next, Lu took a cleaver and began the lengthy process of dismembering the body. He then wrapped the parts in blankets and disposed of them, along with the murder weapon, in various locations. After this, he discovered that the floor and bed in Mariko's room were covered in blood. To destroy the evidence, he took everything to the backyard and burned it. After hearing Lu Xiaochuan's confession about the crime process, all the police present were shocked. The bespectacled man who appeared gentle before them was capable of such brutal acts. Although Lu Xiaochuan had confessed to the entire crime process, the victim's body and the murder weapon had not been found, so he still couldn't be charged. Whether Lu understood this point or not, he still refused to reveal the specific locations. In the following days, he sometimes said he dumped the body in Tainan, sometimes in Kaohsiung, constantly lying. The police forced him to go to each location to check, but each time they came up empty-handed. Lu Xiaochuan was very cunning, leading the police in circles, exhausting everyone. On March 8th, Lu Xiaochuan still refused to disclose the specific location. The police were also very patient, determined to confront him to the end. That afternoon, after a day of going back and forth between many places, Lu was both hungry and thirsty. He begged the police to let him eat a meal before continuing the search. But the police refused, telling him that if he wanted to eat, he had to reveal the specific location. Seeing the police's firm attitude, Lu thought carefully and finally told the truth. He said he had divided Morocco into 2 parts. The body was dumped at a location on Chongming 13th Road in Tainan City, while the head was thrown into a garbage pile on Nanmen Road. He had gone to the trouble of traveling from Kaohsiung to Tainan, because he knew Morocco had met the kind Mr. Li there. He wanted to cast suspicion on Mr. Li, so he went to Tainan City to dump the body at night. The police went to the location Lu provided, but by this time, a year had passed since the incident. The empty lot on Chongming 13th Road had changed, becoming a parking lot. Lu said that at the time, he had buried the body under a large tree. But over time, the large tree was no longer there. However, the tree roots had not been dug up. After some digging, the police discovered over 100 bone fragments near the tree stump. Forensic examination determined that these bones belonged to a woman between 23 and 25 years old, about 5 feet tall. These characteristics matched the victim, Mariko. Moreover, forensic experts found knife marks on a shoulder blade, believed to be caused by a cleaver. This also matched Lu Xiaochuan's confession. Investigation revealed that the head, after being discarded, had been transferred to the Rondi landfill in Tainan City. Searching for a skull in the foul-smelling garbage pile was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Moreover, the accumulated garbage over the years had produced methane gas, making the excavation potentially dangerous. This was also a significant challenge for the search team. Therefore, they abandoned the search for the head. When asked where he had disposed of the crossbow used in the crime, Lu said he had thrown it into the Love River in Kaohsiung. According to him, even if the police knew the location, it would be useless as the chance of finding it was very small. However, surprisingly, the search team took less than a minute in the water to retrieve the crossbow. The speed was so incredible that it seemed unbelievable. Mariko's mother came to Taiwan once again from Japan. When she learned the terrible news, she broke down in tears. Comforted by others, she said this couldn't be her daughter and refused to take a DNA test. She only hoped the police could find the head. Otherwise, she couldn't believe her daughter had left this world like this. Ms. Hisako's request put the police in a difficult position. Searching for the skull would require a lot of manpower and resources, and there was no guarantee of finding it. The police explained the actual situation to Mariko's mother, and even took her to the garbage dump. After understanding the reality of the situation, Ms. Hisako expressed her understanding and no longer insisted on finding the skull. However, she hoped the police could help find her daughter's personal belongings from when she was alive. When going to Taiwan, Mariko had brought a white backpack containing an umbrella, flashlight, and other items. She said if the police could find these things, would agree to provide her DNA sample. The police agreed to Ms. Hisako's request, but knew that the search would be very difficult. They interrogated Lu again. He said that Mariko's personal belongings had long been thrown into a trash can near his house as garbage, and the trash cans were collected daily by sanitation workers, so the police would never be able to find them. Although Lu Xiaochuan tried to conceal his actions, an unexpected situation broke his plan. During the expanded investigation, the police interviewed sanitation workers working near Lu Xiao at Yang's house. Through this, they collected crucial information from a worker named Bai. Mr. Bai recounted a strange incident that occurred in April 1990, coinciding with Mariko's disappearance. During his routine work, he had discovered a white backpack discarded in a trash can on Feiji Road. What caught his attention was that the backpack looked very new, unlike typical discarded items. Out of curiosity, Mr. B opened the backpack and was surprised to find an umbrella and a flashlight inside, all in brand new condition. Realizing these were still good items, he decided to take them home, thinking it would be wasteful to throw them away. However, from the day he picked them up until the time the police interviewed him, Mr. B had not used any of these items, and they were still kept intact in his house. Later, Mr. B went home to retrieve these items and handed them over to the police. When Mariko's mother saw her daughter's belongings, she understood that her daughter had truly left this world. She then kept her promise and agreed to provide a DNA sample. The results quickly confirmed that the bone fragments found by the police belonged to the victim, Mariko. 1 year after the incident, the Kaohsiung District Court opened a trial. The defendant, Liu Xueqiang, was charged with murder and disposing of a corpse. After the trial, the court announced its verdict. Defendant Liu Xueqiang was found guilty and sentenced to death. However, considering that he suffered from mental illness, which qualified him for a reduced sentence, his death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. During the appeal period, Liu Xueqiang did not accept the verdict and filed multiple appeals. However, his appeals were rejected. After months of relentless investigation, the mysterious disappearance case of Mariko Iguchi was finally resolved, and the murderer received appropriate punishment under the law. However, the conclusion of the case could not bring complete consolation to Mariko's family, especially the mother's pain of losing her child, which would never fade away. Mariko's story has become a painful warning about the potential dangers of traveling alone, as well as a testament to the necessity of increasing vigilance to protect one's safety and that of those around us. Story 2: The case took place in the village of Jiang, Shandong Province, China. On the afternoon of May 28, 2018, a man was looking for a fishing spot along the banks of the Sivan River near Jiang village in Shandong Province. As he walked along the river, he suddenly noticed a bulging suitcase drifting close to the riverbank. The water wasn't very deep here, and since the suitcase looked relatively new, he thought perhaps someone had dropped it by accident, or that there might be something valuable or usable inside. For those who follow true crime documentaries, this is often a signal that something ominous may be inside. However, this man didn't think that way. Eagerly, he waded into the water to pull the suitcase to the shore, feeling pleased as it felt quite heavy. As he unzipped part of the suitcase, he saw something inside wrapped in transparent plastic bags tied securely with rubber bands. So, he unzipped the suitcase entirely and tried to pull it out to see what it was. As you can see in this scene, the man was horrified, throwing the plastic-wrapped contents and the suitcase in opposite directions. At around 3:30 p.m. on May 28th, police from Jiang, Shandong Province, arrived at the Sivan riverbank. Crime scene investigators began taking the man's statement about how he discovered the body. Inside the suitcase was a severely decomposed body, curled up tightly and wrapped in multiple layers of transparent plastic bags. The preliminary on-site examination revealed that the victim was female, approximately 5 feet 1 inch tall, and weighing about 99 pounds, with long hair about 18 inches in length. She was wearing a white t-shirt with blue sleeves, and the shirt had an Adidas logo on the chest. The victim was barefoot and had multiple wounds on her neck, one of which was around 1.4 inches long and very deep, identified as the fatal injury. Due to the prolonged time since death, the body was too decomposed to identify, and there were no identification papers on the person or in the suitcase. The forensic report determined the victim had died approximately 45 days prior, and she was estimated to be between 25 and 29 years old. The neck wounds were consistent with those inflicted by a dagger. Given the extended time in water, there was seepage into the plastic bags wrapping the body, and the victim had been submerged in river water for many days. The victim's hair, fingernails and toenails were almost entirely detached. As you can observe here, these are clumps of the victim's hair that detached, styled in loose curls dyed red-brown with trendy blonde highlights at the ends. Now the first and most critical step is to identify the body, which will allow the investigation to progress toward uncovering the cause of death and identifying the perpetrator. The stretch of river where the suitcase was found is located east of Jiang village in the outskirts of Weifang City. This section of the river is part of the lower course of the Savon River, flowing from east to west with a slow and steady current. It has an average depth of about 8 to 16 feet. Based on the terrain here, police ruled out the possibility that the suitcase had floated downstream from the upper course, as the upper course is shallow and has many rough rocks, while this suitcase was still very new without any scratches or dents from friction. Only in the lower course where the suitcase was discovered is the water deepest and relatively still, which might have allowed the suitcase to remain there for 45 days without significant collisions or scratches. Determining that this was the location where the killer disposed of the body, rather than it having floated downstream, the police mobilized a broad search in the area where the body was found. They also used lawnmowers to clear out bushes and grass along the riverbank, hoping to uncover additional evidence or new clues. The search efforts extended to the dam near the eastern part of this river section, as it could have been the spot where the killer threw the suitcase into the water. Any floating objects on the river were retrieved for examination, but after 2 days of searching around the area, the police found no valuable evidence or leads. They split into smaller teams to question residents who frequently pass through or live near the location. Some locals informed the police that they had noticed the suitcase floating in the river as early as late April, but they assumed it was just trash someone had discarded and didn't think much of it. The section of the river where the body was discovered is quite far from the main road, situated within Jiang village and surrounded by many other villages, making it a rather remote area with limited access. To reach this location, one must travel over 6 miles on village roads after leaving the main highway, which includes sections of concrete paths and rough dirt roads. Therefore, if the person was not from Jiang, it would be difficult to find this spot for disposing of a body. The special task force concluded that at least one of the 2 individuals, either the victim or the suspect, must have been familiar with the area's terrain and environment, or perhaps even lived in Jiang village. As a result, the police conducted a check of all households in Jiang village, which has over 2,000 residents, and extended the search to 21 surrounding villages to see if there were any missing persons or unusual circumstances. After searching throughout Jiang village, the police found no valuable information. The task force then expanded the investigation to the entire city of Weifang and even neighboring cities like Juba and Donggan, yet they found no missing persons matching the characteristics of the female victim found in the Savon River. With no clues left behind by the perpetrator at the scene, the police could only focus on identifying the victim to solve the case. But considering the victim had been deceased for at least a month and a half, why had no one searched for her or reported her missing? Could it be that no family member, friend, or co-worker noticed her absence? The police deduced that the deceased might have been a worker or freelancer from another area who had come to Weifang for work and had little contact with family. Thus, they focused on checking groups of out-of-town laborers working in Weifang, particularly looking for individuals who suddenly stopped working without notice or renters who abruptly terminated their leases. Meanwhile, technicians closely examined the large suitcase, which measured 24 inches in length. The suitcase had been submerged in river water for so long that all traces, such as fingerprints or DNA of the perpetrator, had been washed away. However, investigators examined the suitcase thoroughly and found that its lining fabric, including the zipper on the inner pocket, was in excellent condition, appearing almost brand new. The suitcase's 4 wheels showed very minimal friction and were barely worn down. This suggested the suitcase was very new, likely bought specifically for the purpose of concealing the body and discarding it in the river. Through the brand logo on the suitcase, police tracked down the manufacturer, a factory specializing in producing luggage items located in another province in the town of Xiangquang, Baoding County, Hebei Province. Police immediately dispatched a team to Hebei for further information. The factory manager informed the police that they produced quite a few suitcases of this model. However, only 23 units of the 24-inch size like the one police were investigating had been produced. Production records, which are maintained for calculating workers' pay, indicated that the batch was manufactured in March 2018. This news brought a sense of relief to the police team. If hundreds or thousands of identical suitcases had been mass-produced, the investigation would have been far more challenging and time-consuming. However, tracing just over 20 suitcases would be much more manageable. According to the shipment records, these 23 suitcases were mostly sold in bulk to various retail outlets, including some in Shandong. Of the 23 suitcases, The task force located 19 that were still on display in stores. 2 more were sold to acquaintances of a shop owner. So the police went to their homes to verify and found that both suitcases were still in use by the buyers. This left a total of 21 out of 23 suitcases accounted for. The remaining 2 suitcases were sold individually to customers at a store in Guangyuan County, Shandong Province. These last 2 suitcases had not been traced yet. The task force deduced that the suitcase connected to the case was likely one of these 2 untraced units, suggesting that it had been purchased from the retail store in Guangyuan County. Unfortunately, the store didn't have any security cameras, so even though the purchase had taken place within the past month, the police had no way of gathering details or identifying information about the buyer. The luggage store in Guangyuan County, where the suitcase was sold, is about 43 miles from Zhejiang village, where the victim's body was discovered. The police connected these 2 points to form a straight line, treating it as a diameter, and began their investigation in a line. With the cooperation of local police, they investigated local missing persons cases and visited numerous businesses and factories. Gather information on individuals who had abruptly quit their jobs, but they still couldn't find anyone matching the victim's description. The Guangyuan area has many large industrial parks and a significant number of workers from other regions, making the pool of individuals to investigate vast. This presented significant challenges for the task force as the investigation was time-consuming and complex without yielding any breakthrough information to help solve the case. After a period of unsuccessful investigation aimed at identifying the victim in the area, the police held a meeting and made a bold decision. After carefully assessing the river's current, water depth, and the location where the body was disposed of, they decided to block off both ends of the river section and drain the water to search for evidence on the riverbed. Although this plan would require considerable labor, resources, and finances, and offered no guarantee of useful findings, the investigation would likely hit a dead end without it. The police decided to take this relatively risky step, using an excavator and 3 water pumps to carry out the plan. As the water was being drained from the river section, the investigation team continued searching for clues to the victim's identity. They went to factories, businesses, restaurants, stores, and rental housing around Zhejiang village. At a factory in Zhejiang, the police obtained information about a missing woman. Several workers mentioned that in early April, a 28-year-old factory worker named Yang Lin had suddenly stopped coming to work and had not been reachable since. Based on descriptions from her co-workers, Yang Lin had long, brown-dyed hair and was about 5 feet 1 inch tall, closely matching the victim's characteristics. After searching for Yang Lin's name and birth date in the national database, the police finally made contact with Yang Lin, who was in Hebei. It turned out that due to some personal relationship issues in Zhejiang, she had returned to her hometown after leaving her factory job and had changed her mobile phone number. This change led her former co-workers to believe that she had cut off contact. At this point, the police received a new lead. Not long ago, a hot spring bathhouse in the area, which had been operating fairly well, suddenly closed around mid-April. Villagers reported that the bathhouse owner moved everything out overnight. Moreover, locals who frequented the hot spring bathhouse informed the police that the cashier was a young woman named Lu Fan, about 26 or 27 years old, standing around 5 feet 3 inches tall, with brown hair highlighted with blonde streaks, closely matching the victim's description. A few days before the bathhouse closed, Lu Fan stopped coming to work, and people recalled that, shortly before quitting, she had a heated argument over the phone with someone about money. The police called the bathhouse owner, Lu Yen, and requested his cooperation to learn more about the cashier and the bathhouse's activities before it closed. However, upon realizing the caller was from the police, Lu Yen became irritated and refused to cooperate. After this call, Lu Yen ignored all further attempts by the police to contact him. The police found Lu Yan's residence in Daguang village, about 9 miles from Xiong. When officers arrived at his home, he remained guarded, silent, and unwilling to answer any questions. Checking Lu Yan's records, police discovered that he had a criminal history, including charges of theft due to gambling debts. He was divorced, with his children living with their mother. Though his hot spring bathhouse was bringing in business and stable income, his gambling habit left him struggling to cover daily expenses, let alone child support payments. The police considered him a relatively high-risk suspect. It eventually took a court-ordered mandate to get Lu Yen to cooperate during questioning. He explained that he'd been fined multiple times by local police in the past for offenses ranging from theft to violations during the operation of his bathhouse, which made him feel wary and reluctant to interact with law enforcement. Lu Yan also added that he closed the bathhouse because he was behind on rent and still owed Lu Fan, his cashier, overdue wages. Just days before the bathhouse shut down, Lu Fan argued with him over the phone about her unpaid wages. She even took all the day's earnings to cover what he owed her before quitting and leaving town. From Lu Yan's remaining employee records, he provided Lu Fan's contact information to the police, who confirmed that Lu Fan was indeed alive and had moved on to a job elsewhere. This meant that two of the people previously suspected missing had both been located, yet the identity of the body in the suitcase remained unknown. Meanwhile, after 4 days of continuous effort to drain nearly 40,000 cubic meters of water from this river section, the riverbed finally began to emerge. Due to the thick mud, police could stand and search directly in the shallow areas near the bank. However, in deeper, muddier sections toward the middle of the river, officers placed construction planks on the mud and used shovels and other farming tools to sift through the riverbed carefully, and the police's efforts finally paid off. About 100 feet from the spot where the body was found, they discovered various items, which you can see on the screen. A key, a blue left sandal, 2 pairs of socks, a pair of earphones, a fairly new quilted leather handbag with a metal strap, and several other small items, including a pink comb, a pair of sunglasses, and multiple bank cards from under the river. Of course, we can't say for sure that all these items belong to the victim. Some may have been discarded by others. However, among the recovered items, the most valuable to the investigation were the bank cards. The police took these cards to the issuing banks to verify the account holder's identity. They discovered all of the cards belonged to a 29-year-old woman, named Wu Yenyu from Minzhou Village, Huimin County, Shandong Province. Looking at her profile photo, as you can see, she was wearing a thin red jacket over a white t-shirt with blue sleeves. This t-shirt closely matched the color and style of the one found on the body in the Savon River. Based on the registered address, the task force quickly contacted Wu Yan's parents and visited their home to conduct a DNA comparison. They confirmed the victim was indeed Wu Yan, a woman who had traveled far from Huimin County for work. The victim's parents told the police that Wu Yan had been married once, but due to numerous conflicts and her in-laws' harsh treatment, she divorced in 2013. Since then, she had worked away from home, occasionally sending money back to her parents. Wu Yan had no children and no desire to remarry, preferring a simple and free life without attachments. In contrast to Wu Yan's wishes, her parents and relatives constantly pressured her about marriage, often arranging blind dates, which made Wu Yan uncomfortable and reluctant to visit home. Some years, even during the Lunar New Year, Wu Yan would not come back, opting to call her parents to wish them well and send additional money. Because of this, her family was accustomed to her absence, with Wu Yan usually being the one to initiate contact. Her family, frustrated that she hadn't married by age 29, rarely called her unless it was something particularly important. So when the police arrived, the family was shocked. They hadn't been in touch with Wu Yan for the past month and a half and couldn't believe she had been brutally murdered and thrown into a river. The last place Wu Yan worked before she disappeared was not in Jiang, where her body was found, but at a factory in Guangyuan County, Shandong. Interestingly, Guangyuan County is also where the store sold the 2 suitcases matching the one found in the Saiwan River that remained unverified. Now that all the clues were coming together, the police knew they were close to solving this case. The police returned to Guangyuan County and visited the factory where Wu Yan had worked. Factory records showed she had been dismissed on April 25th due to a company policy that automatically terminates employees absent for more than 7 days without explanation. An HR staff member informed the police that Wu Yan had been absent since April 17th. This aligned with the forensic estimate that Wu Yan died in mid-April. During their investigation at the factory, the police learned from Wu Yan's co-workers, who shared dormitories with her, that she had many admirers. She was described as slim, very beautiful, hardworking, and skilled in conversation. Apparently, she had been dating a man from another county around the time she went missing. The two had rented a place outside the factory complex to live together, and she only occasionally returned to her dormitory. However, no one knew who this man was, which county he came from, or where the rented room was located, as Wu Yan was highly private about her personal life. She rarely discussed her relationships, leaving almost no information about him. Given that her body was found in a secluded section of the river in Jiang, investigators suspected the man might be from Jiang village. They reasoned that the person who dumped her body must have been highly familiar with the area to navigate to this remote river section. The task force launched an investigation into Wu Yan's social connections, focusing especially on individuals from Zhuyang. Most of her acquaintances were from Pinzhou, Xianing and Guangyan, except for one man from Zhuyang, a 23-year-old named Su Maoxiang, who was reportedly close to Wu Yan. Records showed that he also worked in Guangyan. When police visited the factory where Su Mao worked, HR staff informed them that he had been absent since April 17th. Although the two had worked at different factories, both had disappeared without notice on the same day, one ending up dead and the other missing. This reinforced the police's suspicion that Su Mao might be the killer. Further investigation revealed that Su Mao's last ATM withdrawal was in Jiayi County, Shandong Province, so the police dispatched officers to Jiayi to track down the suspect. They discovered that Su Mao's uncle also lived in Jiayi. At 4 a.m. on June 9th, while the village was still silent, the special task force swiftly surrounded the uncle's house, apprehending the suspect on the spot. While he was still asleep, confronted by police, Su Mao confessed on the spot that he had indeed killed Wu Yan. Su Mao handed over the murder weapon he had kept with him, a dagger. Following Su Mao's arrest, police obtained a statement in which he confessed and led them back to the rental unit where he had lived with Wu Yan and Guang Yan. It was a small room, barely large enough to fit a table, a bed, and a wardrobe. The room was quite messy. Here, forensic technicians found 12 dried bloodstains on the walls and bed sheets. DNA tests confirmed that these bloodstains all belonged to Wu Yan. According to Su Mao's account, the incident took place at 1 a.m. on April 17, 2018. Though it was late, Wu Yan and Su Mao were still arguing over issues from the previous evening. She had suggested breaking up, criticizing Su Mao for earning less, being careless about others, living messily, and being lazy. Although they lived together, Wu Yan shouldered most of the living expenses, while Su Mao's salary was nearly spent on his own personal needs. As a result, they had argued frequently about money and Su Mao's lack of responsibility in their shared life. Though Wu Yan was 6 years older than Su Mao, she was very attractive, energetic, and hardworking, drawing attention from many admirers, including those with far better financial standing than Su Mao. Because of this, he believed that Wu Yan wanted to break up as an excuse to pursue a new relationship. Wu Yan, however, accused Su Mao of never owning up to his faults and always blaming others. She started packing her belongings, planning to leave that night. But when Su Mao's attempts to make her stay failed, he grabbed a dagger and repeatedly stabbed her in the neck. After the murder, Su Mao cleaned up the crime scene. By noon, he went to a nearby luggage store to buy a large suitcase for Wu Yan's body. Since she was petite, standing at only 5 feet 1 inch and weighing 99 pounds, he wrapped her body in several layers of plastic bags, tying them securely. That night, he transported the suitcase on his motorcycle to the Sivan River in Jiang village, where he threw it into the river. He also tossed her other belongings like her sandals, handbag, and bank cards into the water. Su Mao knew the area well, as the river was near his home. Afterward, he quit his job, left his rented room, and hid at his uncle's home in Jai County until his capture. In November 2018, Su Mao was sentenced to death, paying the ultimate price for his crime. In this case, Wu Yan was repeatedly subjected to the control of others, whether from her family or from the man she loved. She had argued with her boyfriend numerous times, hoping Su Mao would change and become more responsible. Yet, rather than improving, Su Maoxiang blamed her for wanting to break up to pursue someone else. And when Wu Yinyu decided to end things, he brutally murdered her. Any justification of love for this crime is simply an excuse. It was a selfish, possessive kind of love. True love would want the other person to be happy, fulfilled, and safe. Each person lives their own life, and happiness or sorrow is something they alone can experience. We cannot impose our ideas on others under the pretense of wanting the best for them. Every individual has a unique inner world, faces different issues, and has their own ways of thinking. Story 3. Late at night on January 25, 1981, the quiet streets of Toa Payoh, Singapore were shrouded in darkness. Around 2:20 a.m., a weary carpenter was walking home after a late movie showing. His home was in Building 12, and as he passed Building 11, he noticed a fairly large new brown leather duffel bag placed near the stairwell. During the economically challenging 1980s, finding a brand new bag abandoned in a public space was unusual. With only silent buildings around and not a single person in sight, the man thought it might be someone's forgotten belongings. He approached the bag and unzipped it to check its contents. What he discovered inside left him utterly shocked. In the dim moonlight, he saw black hair and an arm. Terrified, he dropped the bag, causing its contents to become visible. In sheer panic, he ran straight to the nearest police station to report what he had found. When investigators arrived at the scene, they discovered an intact female body. The face showed bruises around the nose, mouth, and knees. No other injuries were found on the body. A pair of small clogs was found at the bottom of the bag. The body was still warm with no signs of rigor mortis, indicating the death had occurred less than 2 hours earlier. The body had short hair and was dressed in a yellow uniform. The cause of death was determined to be suffocation from having the mouth and nose forcibly covered. Investigators also found evidence of assault. The cause of death was suffocation from having her mouth and nose forcibly covered. There were also signs of sexual assault. Through cross-referencing missing persons reports, police quickly identified the victim as Agnes Ng-Shu-Hak, a 9-year-old girl who had been missing for 10 hours. She was last seen around 4 p.m. on January 24th near a church in Toa Payoh, just a few hundred yards from her school. Agnes and her older sister were walking home when her sister realized she had forgotten something at school. The sister asked Agnes to wait while she went back to get it. When she returned, Agnes was gone. The sister initially assumed Agnes had walked home ahead of her, but when she arrived home, Agnes wasn't there. When the older daughter told their parents what happened, they immediately returned to search the area around the church and school. After several hours of searching without success, they contacted the police. Just 10 hours after her disappearance, Agnes' body was found less than a mile from where she was last seen. At that time, investigative technology was limited. There were no surveillance cameras, no DNA testing, and the leather bag yielded no fingerprints. No one had seen who left the bag. The leads seemed to vanish into darkness, making the case increasingly difficult to solve. While police were investigating Agnes' murder, the family received an unexpected call. Less than a week after Agnes' death, a woman called the family. She threatened that Agnes' sister would be the next victim. The caller went further, describing details of Agnes' murder. Tragically, Agnes' mother received this call. Imagine a mother's pain having to listen to her child's killer describe the horrific details. The pain was like 1,000 knives to her heart, but she couldn't hang up. Her other daughter's life was being threatened. Through extreme pain and panic, the mother had to stay on the line and listen to every word from the person who had taken her young child. The family immediately reported the mysterious call to police. The police traced the call, though the technology of the time made it a slow process. After half a day, they determined the call came from a public phone booth between buildings 10 and 11. At this point, the police had already determined that the killer was probably someone who knew the victim's family because she knew Agnes had a sister and also knew the family's phone number. Other than that, no other information could be gathered and the clues were cut off. While police were under intense pressure, the killer struck again. Around 6 a.m. on February 7th, nearly 2 weeks after discovering Agnes' body, the body of a 10-year-old boy was found. The boy, wearing light blue clothes, was lying face up on the grass in front of Building 10 in Toa Payoh. The boy had 3 burn marks on his back and a deep cut about 0.2 inches deep and 0.6 inches wide on his right index finger, though the blood had been cleaned away. Like Agnes' case, the body was still warm, with death estimated to have occurred 4 to 5 hours earlier. The burns on the boy's back were caused by electric shocks administered after death. The autopsy revealed the cause of death as drowning, but this likely occurred in a bucket, tub, or bathtub rather than in a public water source. The victim was identified as Ghazali Marzuki, a 10-year-old student at Henry Park Elementary School. He had been staying with his grandmother in a neighborhood about a quarter mile from where Agnes lived. Ghazali was last seen alive 12 hours before his body was found on February 6th. At 6 p.m., when Ghazali was playing in the yard with his 2 cousins, a woman approached the children and asked them to help her put some things in the car. At that time, Ghazali was the oldest of the 3 children, and he was very kind, so he enthusiastically ran to help the woman. The 2 cousins continued to play in the yard, but waited for a long time, but did not see Ghazali return. The 2 cases shared several similarities. Both victims' bodies were found just hours after their disappearances. Both were children, and both cases involved a mysterious woman. In Agnes' case, the killer called to threaten the family, while in Ghazali's case, two cousins witnessed him leaving with a woman. This suggests that both crimes may have been committed by the same perpetrator. In the boy's case, police found a light pink blood stain on his nose, blood diluted with water. This was consistent with drowning victims, where water entering the respiratory system through drowning causes internal bleeding that can lead to blood seeping from the nose and mouth. The police decided to investigate this blood trail. This may be the only clue the police have. Continuing to expand the search area, the police discovered a small blood drop 20 meters away. The blood color is lighter than normal and mixed with water, so it is very likely that Ghazali's blood flowed from his nose when transporting the boy's body. Following this trail, they reached the stairwell of Building 12. Though the killer had been careful, the watery blood from the victim's nose had apparently gone unnoticed in the dark as they transported the body. Police immediately surrounded the 7-story building to prepare for a search of each apartment. More diluted pink blood drops were found between the 5th, 6th, and 7th floor stairwells. The blood drops became more concentrated at higher levels. When they reached the 7th floor corridor, the pale pink blood trail stopped right in front of the door of the first apartment. At that time, the police saw a man wearing a shirt and trousers closing the door. He seemed to be preparing to go somewhere. The police informed this man that they were blocking off and searching this area because it was related to the child murder case. After further inspection, the police found that the entire 7th floor area only had this man's apartment, but it was clear from the information provided by witnesses that the initial judgment was that the murderer was a woman. So is there a woman living in this apartment? After investigating further, the police learned that the man was Adrian Lim, 39, who had been involved in a rape case that was still under investigation, with no specific conclusion, and was on bail. But because the blood trail led to Lim's door, the police suspected that the woman living with Lim was also involved in the case. But what was more surprising was that Lim lived in the same house with both women, his wife, Tan Mui Chu, and his lover, Ho Ka-hong. The police had a search warrant and entered Lim's apartment. It looked very strange. When they entered the door, they saw a mixed-style altar, meaning worshipping all kinds of different religions. In the amber-lit room, police found a number of religious items in the apartment. There were crosses and Hindu and Chinese statues on the altar. Some of the statues were smeared with blood, and the blood was so fresh that police thought it might have come from the wounds on Ghazali's hand. But Lim said that the blood covering the statues was just candle wax from red candles bought from China that he had smeared on them for the ritual. Police then searched the kitchen and found blood on the kitchen floor. When questioned, Lim said he had killed a chicken in the kitchen during the Chinese New Year. But rapid tests later showed that it was human blood. The more police searched Lim's room, the more grisly evidence they discovered. Blood stains were imprinted on the slippers, shorts, and handkerchief, as if they were evidence of an undeniable crime. A woman's robe was still soaked in a bucket of water, the blood stains still unerasable. The room was a gruesome crime scene with blood-stained objects scattered everywhere. Even more disturbing was the presence of anesthetic drugs and a syringe filled with blood suspected to be Ghazali's. The police also found a clump of hair under the carpet and the sofa. Judging by the length and softness of the hair, it looked like Ghazali's hair. His refrigerator was also full of vials of blood. Finally, the police found a piece of paper stuck inside a phone book with the names Agnes and Ghazali. Agnes' name had been in the only bin found that morning, and there had been no news. So the fact that Ghazali's name was written on this piece of paper meant that the people living in the apartment must have known very well about the murder. During the investigation, a resident living on the 5th floor of the building said that at around 2 a.m. on February 7th, when he returned from his night shift, he saw Lim and his wife coming down from the 7th floor. The wife was also carrying a child on her shoulder. The child looked quite old, about 9 to 10 years old. The boy had his head on her shoulder, looking like he was dozing off. Lim also went with his wife. Both of them left the apartment building and headed towards buildings 10 and 11. Soon after that, Lim, Tan, and Ho were arrested and charged with murder. At that time, when these three people were arrested, there were also lawyers assigned to defend them. But with such clear evidence, the lawyers did not focus on the issue of denying or arguing about this evidence because it was almost impossible. This group of lawyers focused on the health and mental health issues of their clients. They believed that these crazy murders were caused by Lim, Tan, and Ho's mental illness. And the way Lim lived with his wife Tan and his lover Ho in the same house, in a peaceful and harmonious manner, clearly showed that their mental health was problematic. Furthermore, the lawyers believed that the bodies of the victims were all dumped very close to the perpetrator's house, no more than 200 meters away. This usually does not happen in similar cases where people are killed at home and then disposed of, because the perpetrator will always try to take the body as far away as possible to avoid being implicated. However, psychiatric evaluations countered these arguments. Psychiatrists found that Lim was fully aware of his actions and skilled at manipulating others psychologically. While Tan and Ho showed some mental vulnerability and were easily manipulated, they still understood their actions and their consequences. Tan even admitted to accepting the living arrangement because Lim provided her with material comforts and unlimited shopping. The investigation continued for 41 days to gather all the evidence and statements from all parties. Lim was a very stubborn person. He only answered the questions he wanted to answer and remained silent about the other questions. Moreover, his statements were inconsistent. He did not admit to the crime, but blamed his wife and lover. As for the two women Tan and Ho, they kept saying that because they were too scared and also believed in Lim, because they believed that he had supernatural powers and admired that, they worshipped him like a saint, and from then on were willing to follow any request he made. After synthesizing all the information from the statements, evidence, and relatives around the three perpetrators, the police pieced together the biography and the process of committing crimes as follows. Adrian Lim was born on January 6, 1942, in a middle-class family. As the eldest son in the family, his childhood was not very complete. Although gifted with an extraordinary intelligence, the young Lim soon had hidden abnormalities in his personality. Lim was a shy, quiet child. However, behind that quiet appearance was a fire that could easily burn. Even the smallest things could make him explode with anger. This loss of emotional control was a worrying sign from a young age. In the eyes of teachers and people around him, Lim was an intelligent student who learned quickly. But ironically, he himself was not interested in studying. When he first studied the program equivalent to grade 8 today, Lim decided to drop out of school. From then on, he had to fend for himself, doing all kinds of jobs to make a living. In his youth, he briefly worked as an informant for internal security, giving him insight into police operations. In 1962, he found work at Rediffusion Singapore. For 3 years, he worked as an electrician, installing and maintaining equipment before being promoted to bill collector. He stayed with this job for years, satisfied with the income. In April 1967, Lim married his childhood sweetheart and had 2 children. He even agreed to convert to Catholicism before the wedding. They lived frugally on their average incomes and saved enough money to buy a flat on the 7th floor of Building 12, Toa Payoh. At this time, had a seemingly stable life with his own job and family. However, behind that peaceful appearance was a soul that yearned for more distant things. Fame and power were things that with his meager capital and limited education, Lim could hardly reach. Amidst the torment of the banality of life, Lim gradually found a fascinating escape, which was the world of spirituality and magic. For him, this was like a shortcut to achieve the burning desire for power that he always desired. Spiritual world with its mysteries attracted Lim, where he believed he could hold supernatural powers. In the 1980s, belief in the spiritual world was much more popular than it is today. Due to the limitations of science and technology, at that time, if people had diseases that were difficult to cure or difficult to explain, they often thought of spirituality, seeing a shaman instead of a doctor to cure the disease. This has created opportunities for people with real spiritual abilities and scammers to use various tricks to gain personal benefits. And Lim is one of them. With the desire to become a powerful magician, Lim planned to build his image meticulously and purposefully. He chose a clever approach, pretending to be an ordinary customer going to see a fortune teller. But in reality, he was there to learn from local shamans. Every day, Lim spent money to sit and listen to observe. He studied every detail, how the fortune tellers read their customers, the art of conversation, and especially how they created a mysterious shell around themselves. Silently recorded all of these, like pieces of the puzzle for his future perfect role. Not stopping there, Lim also learned Malay and Thai. Reading spells in these strange languages would create a strong impression on customers, making them believe in his supernatural powers. In particular, he was attracted to the image of the goddess Kali in Hinduism and Toa Payoh. After gaining some understanding of the spiritual field, Lim began to promote his ability to use charms and magic to cure diseases. Since 1973, when Lim was 31 years old, he was famous in the magic circle. Although he was very young compared to his colleagues in the same profession, his actions went far beyond the usual scams. Through keen observation and persuasive speaking, he quickly attracted a large number of customers, mainly the elderly, those with serious illnesses but not much money and unable to afford expensive treatment. These people came to him for spiritual healing, but his main target was young women and prostitutes. Therefore, he focused on promoting amulets because these people often mainly wanted to ask for amulets for business or love. Lim took advantage of the weakness of young women to manipulate them. Based on blind faith and magic, he used foreign languages to fake spells and added magic-like performances, tricks, and drama to make customers completely believe in his spiritual abilities. In this way, he has deceived many people. With male customers, he only asks for money to lift the curse. But with female customers, his services become more complicated. His services include using prangan statues for massage to cure diseases. After intimate contact with the customers through massage sessions, he would skillfully take advantage of this private space to gradually create intimate relationships with the female customers. Then he would use seductive words about maintaining youth, beauty, or luck to lure them into depraved acts. With this trick, Lim not only earned a large sum of money, but also satisfied his dark desires. Even his wife and lover were women he had deceived with magic, and then became dependent on him. In fact, was not Lim's first wife, but his first wife was his childhood friend who had divorced him before. In 1974, when Lim was 32 years old, he met Tan, a bar waitress with a wounded soul. This young girl carried scars from a childhood without parental love. Her grandmother, the only person who loved and supported Tan emotionally, had just passed away, causing her to fall into a state of complete depression. Lim quickly grasped this weakness of Tan. From the first fortune-telling sessions, their relationship gradually developed into secret dates. After 2 years, when their feelings were deep enough, Lim expressed a perverted intention to bring Tan home and force his wife to accept a polygamous life with one husband and 2 wives. But his plan did not succeed. His first wife, instead of agreeing to this unreasonable proposal, decisively took her 2 children and left the 7th-floor apartment and filed for divorce. Now only Lim and Tan remained in the apartment. In 1977, just a few months after his wife and children left, Lim and Tan quickly got married. Since then, Tan was not only his wife but also a money-making tool, a lackey for Lim to operate a fraud. He forced Tan to become a prostitute and took all the money she earned, saying that having sex with younger men would make Tan even more beautiful and happy. Although Tan showed more and more obvious signs of depression, she was absent-minded and did not want to talk to anyone. Lim convinced Tan that these signs were caused by evil spirits. To solve the problem, to drive away the evil spirits that were haunting Tan, he used treatments such as electrocution, abusing Tan, and at the same time he asked Tan to help him trick other people to come to fortune-telling and ask for amulets, making them completely believe in Lim as someone with supernatural spiritual powers. In addition to Tan, there was also a 24-year-old woman who fell into his spiritual trap, Ho, his lover. Ho was brought to Lim by her mother to help solve some problems in her marriage. Although Lim knew that Ho was married at that time, because Lim was infatuated with this young girl, he wanted to keep Ho by his side, so he started to fill her head with the idea that her husband's family was not good. He even fabricated a lie to threaten Ho that her husband was planning to force her to become a prostitute to earn money. After a period of psychological manipulation, Ho completely trusted him and even agreed to become his wife on a holiday, a wedding that he organized in his own house in secret with only the 2 of them together. After a while, Ho would occasionally stay and live with Lim in the apartment for a few days and then leave her husband. At that time, Ho's husband came to the place to ask his wife to come back and wanted to expose Lim's scam. Here, Lim incited Ho to seduce her husband to participate in an electric shock treatment to exorcise evil spirits. At that time, this man wanted to quickly expose Lim's scam, so he agreed to participate. During this process, Lim intentionally increased the voltage, causing Ho's husband to be electrocuted to death on the spot, and he staged the scene as an accident. When the police arrived, Lim said that Ho's husband had accidentally been electrocuted when he tried to turn on a broken fan. He explained that while praying and casting spells, the lights in the room were turned off, causing no one to notice the fatal incident until it was too late. Ho was so shocked by her husband's death that she was briefly hospitalized in a mental hospital. After recovering, she moved in with Lim. Since then, Lim has been living with two women at the same time, Tan and Ho. Tan and Ho not only worked as prostitutes to earn money for Lim, but they were also responsible for convincing female customers to sleep with him. If they failed to convince them, he would also use sleeping pills on women he wanted to take advantage of. Lim's doctor said that in just 1 year, he had visited his clinic more than 40 times to get hormone injections to increase his sexual ability. On October 19, 1980, about a year before the murder of the two children, there was a woman named Lucy. She was a door-to-door saleswoman, and that day she stopped by Lim's house to introduce some beauty products to his wife. Lim was pleased to see this beautiful woman, so he tried to trick Miss Lucy by saying that he saw an evil spirit haunting her and offered to help Miss Lucy chase it away. But Miss Lucy did not believe him and firmly refused his offer. Lim then mixed 2 capsules of Dalmadorm, a sedative at that time, into the woman's drink and gave it to his wife, telling Tan to invite her to drink it. Miss Lucy did not suspect anything at the time, and after drinking it, she fell asleep and was abused by Lim. After that incident, Lucy reported the incident to the police, and they arrested Lim. But Lim told the police that there was no rape and that it was completely consensual. He said he was a womanizer and that Lucy was attracted to him. But after he got bored of her, she became jealous of Tan and Ho and sued him for revenge. At that time, both Lim's wife and his mistress, who were living with him, were also manipulated by him to testify to what he said. At that time, this scandal was very famous in Toapeo because a famous shaman like him was involved in a rape case that caused a stir in the whole area. At this time, Lim thought of another crazy way to distract public opinion and the attention of the police. At the same time, because he had read some documents saying that sacrificing children would bring luck and power, he convinced Tan and Ho that it was necessary to sacrifice children to appease the wrath of the goddess Kali, so that she would protect him from further troubles and lawsuits. At that time, and Ho, with blind faith, began to search for children to carry out their crazy plan of sacrificing the gods. After they considered and eliminated some children due to their appearance, ethnicity, or because there were too many people around, Lim finally chose the first victim, Agnes, who was 9 years old, while waiting for her sister to return to school. After taking the child to the room, they interrogated her to get her name, date of birth, phone number, and home address to serve the sacrifice. Lim then forced Agnes to drink anesthetic and raped her. They then killed Agnes by covering her mouth and nose, causing her to suffocate. According to Ho, this was the first time they killed someone, so it took them 10 minutes to kill the victim. After the sacrifice, they stuffed Agnes' body into a leather bag and dumped her near the stairs in Building 11. The news was all over the newspapers right after Agnes' death. They continued to stir up public opinion when Tan called the victim's family to threaten them, and it seemed that their method was really successful in distracting public opinion. The local witch doctor's sex scandal had been overshadowed by a brutal child murder case, and they felt like they had done it perfectly without a trace. Not long after, they decided to sacrifice a second child. Since the previous time it was a girl, this time it would be a boy. After choosing a target, Ho approached Ghazali while he was playing in the yard with his cousins. She asked the innocent boy to help carry things from a nearby house, but immediately after he was out of sight, they restrained, bound, and gagged Ghazali and put him in the car. That night, also when there were no people around, they took Ghazali to the apartment on the 7th floor. Like Agnes, Ghazali was given sedatives and tied to an electric chair. Lim used a knife to cut a wound on Ghazali's hand, and directly drank the boy's blood. He believed that his spiritual power would increase after performing this ritual. Lim then drowned the boy in the bathtub with the help of Tan and Ho. They placed Ghazali in front of the sacrificial altar and continuously electrocuted the body. After completing the ritual, Lim and Tan took the boy's body to dispose of it at dawn the next morning, while Ho stayed home to clean up the blood stains. They thought they had done it very discreetly, but they did not expect that Ghazali's nose was bleeding all the way, causing the police to follow this clue all the way to the apartment door. On May 25, 1983, 1.5 years after the two murders, after a long period of collecting evidence and considering the psychological and mental states of all 3 defendants to make a final judgment, the court found that none of the 3 defendants had lost their cognitive capacity, so they sentenced all 3 defendants to death. When hearing the verdict, both Tan and Ho bowed their heads and did not react at all, completely accepting it. But Lim laughed heartily in court, saying that he was not afraid and did not regret it. Later, as the time of execution drew closer, Tan and Ho always expressed remorse for the crimes they had committed. Both women often prayed and talked to nuns and priests. Ho asked to be baptized while Tan always prayed, but Lim remained silent. By November 1988, all three murderers were executed by hanging. In this case, the most terrifying thing was how Lim manipulated and used his wife and mistress, using them to scam people for profit. And even more insanely, he murdered 3 people, including 2 children and one of Ho's husband. He took advantage of blind and distorted faith and religion, and at the same time, he took advantage of other people's psychological weaknesses to manipulate and achieve what he wanted. This incident shocked Singaporeans at that time. They could not believe that a person could manipulate the behavior and psychology of others to such an unbelievable extent. Story for the case took place in Maibara City, located in the northeastern part of Shiga Prefecture, near the eastern shore of Lake Biwa, Japan. In the past, this area was known for its abundant reed fields, which often obscured visibility, causing people to lose their way. However, the beautiful scenery of Mount Ichiharu in the area attracts many tourists every year. The main character of this story is Ogawa Tenko, a 28-year-old woman working at a major glass manufacturing company. She was highly skilled in her job, with a promising career path ahead. However, in 2009, her smooth life was abruptly interrupted when she suddenly went missing. On the morning of Friday, June 12, 2009, around 6 a.m., a small roadside parking area in the Ichihara neighborhood of Maibara City became the scene of a shocking discovery. A team of sanitation workers had gathered to clean storm drains, dropping a pump into one of the drains to extract dirty water. As the job progressed, the pump unexpectedly got stuck. Curious about the obstruction, the workers investigated and were horrified to find a body floating in one of the drains. The workers immediately ran outside and called the police. Responding quickly, police arrived at the scene, set up a perimeter, and began investigating. The area where the body was found lies at the base of Mount Ichiharu, a secluded spot with no streetlights, bordered by woods, and with no nearby houses. Normally, aside from occasional passing trucks, there is little pedestrian traffic. This small roadside parking area is often used by hikers as a place to park before heading up the nearby trail. A sign in the lot reads, "Ichihara cares for you. Please do not litter and keep the area clean." The parking lot has 4 storm drains, each identical in size, with an opening diameter of about 25 inches and a depth of approximately 7 feet. The drain where the body was found was one of these. Since the drain had accumulated a significant amount of water, the police had to call on the fire department for assistance. After some time, they managed to retrieve the body. Preliminary observations indicated that the victim was a woman wearing a blue uniform from a glass manufacturing company. She had a noticeable head injury, suggesting that the fall into the drain was unlikely to have been accidental. According to the sanitation workers, there had been heavy rains a few days prior, causing storm drains along the roadside to collect a considerable amount of dirty water. That morning, they were assigned to clean the drains when the pump became blocked, leading to their unsettling discovery. The scene investigation lasted into the afternoon of the same day. The police drained the water from the manhole and found several items at the bottom, including a mascara stick, an iron hammer, and a car key. Near the manhole, they discovered blood stains and a clump of brown hair. In the nearby bushes, they found a woman's glove and a pair of blood-stained shoes. The victim's cell phone was not recovered. Unfortunately, the road where the incident occurred had no surveillance cameras, posing significant challenges for the investigation. From the scene, it was clear that this was not an accidental fall. Preliminary findings suggest that the victim had a violent struggle with the perpetrator before being struck with an iron hammer and thrown into the manhole. To avoid detection, the perpetrator likely took the victim's phone and ID documents. Forensic examination revealed that the head injury was caused by a blunt object, and defensive wounds on her hands indicated resistance before death. The cause of death was drowning, and the estimated time of death was around 8 p.m. the previous evening on June 11th. Police compared the victim's DNA with the missing persons database and identified her as Ogawa Tenko, a 28-year-old woman. In fact, Ogawa Tenko's mother had reported her missing, stating that her daughter left for work on the morning of June 10th. but did not return home or answer calls after work. According to investigations, Ogawa Tenko was born in Nagahama City, Shiga Prefecture. She was the only child in her family, currently single, and living with her parents in the Kanagawa neighborhood of Nagahama City. In 2002, at 21 years old, Ogawa Tenko began working at a glass manufacturing company in the Takara neighborhood of Nagahama, where she was responsible for training new employees. Known for her diligence, modesty, and courteous demeanor, she was well regarded by her colleagues. She had worked in this position for 7 years, and through her efforts had purchased a car, which she drove daily along a 7-mile commute from her home to work. On the morning of June 10, 2009, as usual, Ogawa Tenko, now 28, prepared to drive to work. However, her car suddenly broke down and wouldn't start. Not wanting to be late, she asked her mother to drive her to the company. By 8 p.m., the end of Ogawa Tenko's workday, she told her mother she would take a taxi home. But her mother waited late into the night without her daughter returning and couldn't reach her by phone. Initially, her mother assumed that her daughter was busy with work and would come home once she was done. However, by the next morning, with Ogawa Tenko still not home, she grew anxious. Just as she prepared to go to her daughter's workplace, she received a call from Ogawa Tenko's co-worker, saying that she hadn't come in and was unreachable. This was very unusual. Ogawa Tenko was punctual and never late or absent without notifying someone, prompting the co-worker to check in with her family. Alarmed by this call, her mother immediately sensed that something was wrong, certain her daughter must be in trouble. She quickly went to the police station to report her missing. Tragically, the next day, Ogawa Tenko was found in the manhole at the parking lot. The police approached Ogawa Tenko's parents to deliver the tragic news. They were devastated and, after some comfort from the officers, gradually accepted the reality. They tearfully shared that their daughter was a considerate and filial child who had never caused them any worry. She was always diligent in her work, and her daily routine was simply between home and her company. She had no known conflicts with anyone, and they couldn't understand why anyone would harm her. Based on known clues, Ogawa Tenko disappeared after leaving work on June 10th and had no contact with anyone throughout June 11th. It's likely she was attacked after finishing work on June 10th and thrown into the manhole. However, at that point, she may have only been unconscious. After regaining consciousness in the filthy water, she likely struggled to escape on her own throughout the day. Due to continuous rain, the water level kept rising and finally, by 8 p.m. on June 11th, a day later, she tragically drowned. The police asked her parents if she had acted unusually before the incident. They said their daughter was a shy, introverted person, still single, and usually stayed at home when not at work. On that day, she went to work as usual, showing no abnormal behavior. Upon reviewing the items at the scene, they found that apart from the iron hammer, all items belonged to Ogawa Tenko. The police then went to Ogawa Tenko's glass manufacturing company to gather more information. The company's manager told them she was a rare, dedicated employee who took her work seriously, was responsible, and very patient with new hires. But from June 11th, she had not shown up or requested leave, which worried everyone. A female employee named Kyoko proactively approached the police with an important lead. She revealed that on the evening of June 10th, as she was preparing to leave, she considered asking Ogawa Tenko to walk out with her, but saw her looking anxiously at her phone as if texting someone. Kyoko called out to her, but got no response, so she approached to check in. Ogawa Tenko mentioned that she had some personal matters to handle and might be leaving a bit later, telling Kyoko to go on without her. Kyoko didn't press for details and left on her own. From Kyoko's account, the person texting Ogawa Tenko may know something relevant, but since her phone was missing, the police couldn't retrieve any useful information and had to look for other leads. With permission from the glass company's director, investigators reviewed surveillance footage. It showed that on June 10th, Ogawa Tenko appeared distracted, frequently checking her phone. In the evening, she left the company alone, and her whereabouts were unknown after that. During the investigation, Ogawa Tenko's mother contacted the police again with a crucial lead. She explained that on the second day after her daughter went missing, she called Nami, a close friend of Ogawa Tenko, to inquire about her whereabouts. After learning about the disappearance, Nami tried calling Ogawa Tenko herself, and unexpectedly, someone answered. But it wasn't Ogawa Tenko. It was a strange man. He spoke only a few words before quickly hanging up. Nami later relayed this to Ogawa Tenko's mother. Initially, the mother thought Nami might have dialed the wrong number because her daughter had never dated and had no male friends, so she couldn't imagine a man answering her phone. However, the more she thought about it, the more concerned she became, so she decided to inform the police. The police immediately contacted Nami. She confirmed that on June 11th, she called Ogawa Tenko, and a man answered. At first, she thought she'd dialed the wrong number, but after double-checking, she saw it was correct. She then asked the man if he knew where Ogawa Tenko was. He responded harshly, claiming he was in a meeting and didn't know her whereabouts before hanging up. The police suspected that Ogawa Tenko might have kept her relationship a secret, possibly dating this man, who could have been the one who answered the phone. They considered that the two may have had a conflict that led him to harm her in anger. In line with this theory, the police uncovered new information. Ogawa Tenko had a close, perhaps intimate relationship with a man named Marita Banjo, with whom she frequently spoke on the phone. Recently, it seemed they had been in conflict, arguing and leaving things on bad terms. Marita Banjo was 12 years older than Ogawa Tenko, making him 40 years old, and he lived in Ogani City, Shiga Prefecture. He also worked at the glass manufacturing company and had a supervisor-subordinate relationship with Ogawa Tenko. To avoid raising suspicion, the police quietly investigated residents near Marita's home, discovering that he was married with 2 children. One neighbor told the police that Marita Banjo was highly respected, known for his polite manner and eagerness to help others in need, making him popular as a kind-hearted person in the community. Standing at 5 feet 11 inches, Marita had a refined appearance and seemed mature and trustworthy. With his excellent capabilities, Marita was even selected as a community leader, organizing public activities for the neighborhood. Both before and after the incident, Marita continued to go to work as usual, showing no outward signs of distress. Another neighbor described Marita Banjo as a devoted father who adored his 2 children. Although his job kept him busy, he always made time for his family. On his days off, he often took his kids on outings, frequently seen with them by the riverside catching crabs, appearing happy and content. He was also very considerate toward his wife, and the couple seemed to have a harmonious relationship. Whenever their children's school hosted events, they attended together, admired by other parents. This neighbor added that there had been nothing unusual with his family before or after the incident. His wife continued to cook and shop as usual. The only minor change was that Marita had been coming home later recently, which they attributed to possible overtime at work. Through conversations with neighbors, the police believed that Marita Banjo's relationship with Ogawa Tenko was likely hidden from his wife. At home, he maintained the image of a devoted husband, while secretly sustaining a close relationship with someone else. After their conflict, he allegedly murdered her, then continued to go to work as usual, hiding the affair and any signs of trouble. When the police asked Ogawa Tenko's parents if they knew of her romantic involvement, both stated they were unaware. Their daughter never discussed her personal life, and they assumed she was single. They were completely shocked to learn that Ogawa Tenko was involved with a married 40-year-old man. The police revisited the glass manufacturing company for additional information. A worker named Sato revealed a key detail. Marita Banjo and Ogawa Tenko appeared very close, displaying affectionate behavior, and often leaving work together. Initially, Sato didn't find it strange, as colleagues sometimes develop good relationships. But over time, rumors circulated around the company, suggesting they were secretly involved. Neither Marita Banjo nor Ogawa Tenko addressed these rumors directly, appearing indifferent to them. Sato went on to tell the police about an instance when, on his way home, he saw the two holding hands, which reinforced the rumors for him. Over time, they became more openly affectionate, often spending time together during work hours, and most people, uninterested in intervening, became accustomed to it. However, since Ogawa Tenko's passing, Marita Banjo acted as though nothing had happened, attending work daily as usual, seemingly unaffected, which made some colleagues doubt whether there had been a relationship at all. Nevertheless, rumors within the company began to suggest that Marita Banjo might be responsible for her death. A woman named Yuna came forward to the police, claiming to be a close friend of Ogawa Tenko, to whom Ogawa confided all her troubles. She explained that initially, Ogawa Tenko was unaware that Marita Banjo was married. They worked closely together every day, and eventually feelings developed. Ogawa Tenko held genuine affection for him, seeing him as mature and trustworthy. Although he was 12 years her senior, she believed that their love would transcend the age gap. Initially, they were deeply compatible, and even considered meeting each other's parents when work permitted. However, as time passed, Marita Banjo revealed a darker side, often becoming angry without reason, and even becoming physically violent with Ogawa Tenko. She frequently turned to Yuna for support and considered ending the relationship. But each time they argued, Marita would initiate reconciliation, using sweet words that Ogawa found hard to resist, leading her to repeatedly forgive him. Before the incident, Ogawa Tenko confided in Yuna, expressing suspicions that Marita Banjo might be seeing someone else, potentially betraying her trust. Heartbroken, she confronted him, but Marita turned the tables, accusing her of being unfaithful. This accusation led to a fierce argument between them. Yuna advised Ogawa Tenko to have an honest conversation with Marita, suggesting it might just be a misunderstanding. Shortly afterward, however, Yuna received the tragic news of Ogawa Tenko's fate. She told the police that Marita Banjo certainly had issues, his mood was highly unstable, and he was prone to anger, making extreme actions not out of character for him. Additionally, he was the only one with a clear motive. According to Yuna, Ogawa Tenko was entirely unaware that Marita Banjo was married, and possibly decided to end their relationship after discovering the truth. She may have arranged to meet with him after work on June 10th to discuss the matter. During this conversation, Marita Banjo's anger was likely triggered, resulting in his attack on Ogawa Tenko. However, this was just a theory. The police still needed more evidence to arrest him. Soon new information surfaced. The investigation revealed that Marita Banjo owned a car, which he drove daily. 2 days after Ogawa Tenko's body was found, he suddenly took the car to a repair shop. This suspiciously timed visit drew the police's attention. Investigators went to the repair shop to gather details. A mechanic told the police that Marita Banjo was a regular customer, frequently bringing in his car for any issues. Previously, he would often bring a woman along, showing signs of affection that made them look like a couple. However, on June 13th, Marita came to the shop alone. At the time, the side mirror was damaged, and there was a dent in the front passenger window. Initially, the mechanic assumed it was from an accident, but after close inspection, he found no signs of collision. Curious, he joked with Marita, asking if his girlfriend had damaged the car in a fit of anger. Marita was visibly startled, looking awkward and not responding. Taking the hint, the mechanic didn't press further. When shown a photo of Ogawa Tenko, the mechanic identified her as the woman Marita often brought to the shop. By this point, Marita Banjo had become the prime suspect. The police speculated that after work, Ogawa Tenko had gotten into Marita Banjo's car, where an argument ensued. When they reached the scene of the crime, the altercation escalated and Marita, enraged, struck Ogawa Tenko with a hammer he kept in the car. She attempted to escape, but he pursued her, continuing to hit her with the hammer. In the course of this struggle, he accidentally damaged the side mirror and passenger window. Eventually, Ogawa Tenko sustained a head injury and lost consciousness, at which point Marita threw her into a nearby manhole. Knowing the area well from driving through it frequently, he was aware there were no security cameras around. What he hadn't anticipated was that Ogawa Tenko was still alive, only unconscious, after being thrown into the well. The police immediately searched Marita Banjo's car and eventually found bloodstains on the front passenger seat and inside the left rear brake assembly. DNA tests confirmed that these blood traces belonged to the victim, Ogawa Tenko. 1 week after the incident, based on substantial evidence, the police arrested Marita Banjo on suspicion of murder. An analysis of messages on his phone confirmed a romantic relationship with Ogawa Tenko, along with past arguments stemming from mutual accusations of infidelity. During interrogation, Merida's wife revealed she had been entirely unaware of her husband's affair. In her eyes, he was the ideal husband, devoted to family and loving toward their children. She had never suspected him and was deeply heartbroken to discover he had hidden such actions from her. When police questioned Marita Banjo, he surprisingly remained extremely calm, as if he were entirely disconnected from the case. He denied having an inappropriate relationship with Ogawa Tenko, insisting they were only colleagues with no overstepping of boundaries. According to him, they simply worked together and cared about each other professionally, but some coworkers spread rumors, which he felt helpless to counter, choosing to tolerate rather than confront them. According to Marita Banjo, on the evening of June 10th, Ogawa Tenko, without her own transportation, asked for a ride home. However, he claimed she suddenly became very agitated during the trip, insisting he let her out. Despite his attempts to calm her down, she insisted on leaving, so he pulled over and drove away alone. Morita asserted that he had no knowledge of Ogawa Tenko's death and assumed she was on leave, which was why she hadn't come to work. As for the damaged windshield and side mirror, he said he was unsure of the cause, suggesting that perhaps someone who disliked him had vandalized his car, or that it was an ill-intentioned prank, insisting it had no connection to Ogawa Tenko. Since Morita Banjo continued to deny the charges, and given that crime scene was in an isolated area without surveillance or eyewitnesses, the police could not procure decisive evidence, delaying the case from going to trial. It wasn't until November 4, 2010, that the appeals process of the Supreme Court concluded, allowing the trial to commence. Morita Banjo was charged with murder, concealment of a body, and other related offenses, with the prosecutor requesting a life sentence. In court, Morita Banjo continued to assert his innocence, arguing that the bloodstains found in his car proved nothing. He stated that Ogawa Tenko frequently accepted rides from him, and the blood traces could have been unintentionally left at some point. As for the blood found on the left rear brake assembly, he explained that the tire had previously punctured and Ogawa Tenko, who was in the car at the time, had helped him replace it. During that process, he claimed, she accidentally scraped her foot, resulting in the blood stains. Due to the lack of decisive evidence, both sides argued intensely in court. The police argued that emails found on the defendant's phone could prove there was a romantic conflict between him and the victim. According to the latest testimony from a witness who was a truck driver, on the evening of June 10th, he saw a car resembling Morita Banjo's parked on the roadside near the crime scene. Although it was very dark and he couldn't see clearly, he distinctly remembered the car parked in the lot where the incident took place, with its headlights still on. Additionally, Ogawa Tenko's friend, Yuna, also provided testimony confirming that the victim had been threatened with violence before her death, which suggested Ogawa Tenko may have been in danger. The police suggested that Morita Banjo, fearing exposure of his improper relationship with Ogawa Tenko, became enraged and killed her. Furthermore, the blood on Morita's car, confirmed through DNA testing to belong to Ogawa Tenko, along with the fact that Morita took the car in for repairs shortly after the incident, added to suspicions that he was attempting to eliminate evidence. The defense, on the other hand, argued that the two had indeed met in the car on the day of the incident, but that Morita Banjo had not engaged in any aggressive behavior. They claimed that it was Ogawa Tenko who suddenly became angry and demanded to be let out of the car, after which she met with an unfortunate accident. Both sides remained firmly opposed in their interpretations, leading to ongoing disputes. Meanwhile, Morita denied all charges since his arrest on June 19th, repeatedly stating, "I didn't kill her." Throughout the interrogation, he mostly remained silent and often declined to answer even minor questions. The judge noted that there was an inappropriate relationship between Morita Banjo and Ogawa Tenko, suggesting a motive for murder on the defendant's part. The judge also considered the defendant's explanation to be unreasonable. Although there was no press or media investigating the possibility of a wrongful conviction prior to sentencing, the trial indicated a case of a man inflicting violence on a woman. The victim had suffered blunt force trauma to the head near the man's car. Given the condition of her body, it was likely she had lost a substantial amount of blood. Thus, evidence such as the condition of the vehicle's windshield pointed to signs before and after the incident. The man's car itself was a crucial piece of evidence at the time of the incident. On December 2, 2010, after 11 court sessions, the court reached a verdict. Defendant Morita Banjo was convicted of murder, body disposal, and other charges. However, due to insufficient conclusive evidence, the court did not accept the prosecutor's request for a life sentence, ultimately sentencing him to 17 years in prison. Dissatisfied with the verdict, Morita Banjo appealed to the Supreme Court seeking release. However, without new evidence, the court denied his appeal. While not many believe in Morita's innocence, the case has left much debate, as the exact degree of guilt and the motive behind the crime remain unclear. This case serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of toxic, secret relationships, especially with those who are already married. Story 5. We'll explore an unprecedented case in French judicial history. The main characters in this case are Giselle Pellicot and her husband, Dominique Pellicot. Giselle Pellicot was born in 1951 into an ordinary family in northern France. At age 19, fate brought her together with Dominique Pellicot, a man of the same age. Their meeting quickly blossomed into love, and just 2 years later, in 1972, they decided to share a home together in happiness and with blessings from family and friends. However, from the early days of their marriage, Giselle sensed that her husband was hiding some kind of secret. But with her sensitivity and respect for privacy, she never showed any intention to investigate or pry. She always believed that everyone needed their private space to be respected, even if that person was her spouse. Because of this, she chose to remain silent to give her husband his space. Their married life flowed by in perfect happiness. The eyes of those around them, Giselle and Dominique, were the embodiment of a perfect couple, a beautiful love like in fairy tales. To Giselle, Dominique was always the model of an ideal husband, attentive, devoted, and full of responsibility. Dominique constantly strived to build his career. From an electrician, he worked hard to earn his real estate business certificate and became a successful broker, helping many people with property transactions. Meanwhile, Giselle maintained a stable job at a French power company. Their happiness became even more complete when they welcomed 3 children, 2 sons, David and Francois, and a beautiful daughter named Caroline. This small family made their home in Villiers-sur-Marne, a peaceful suburb of Paris, where they built beautiful memories of their lives together. According to their children's accounts, their childhood was filled with joy and happiness. In their eyes, their parents were a harmonious couple who deeply loved each other, and family bonds were always nurtured. However, like any marriage, they couldn't avoid life's ups and downs. Dominique initially worked as a real estate broker, but due to unstable income that couldn't guarantee the family's livelihood, he decided to switch to working as a sales representative at a computer company. At that time, rising living costs forced the family to face many financial difficulties. In these challenging circumstances, Giselle became the family's solid pillar. With her diligence and capability, she not only maintained a stable job, but was promoted to a management position, significantly contributing to improving the family's financial situation. In 2001, a major shock came when Giselle discovered her husband's debt of €75,000, an enormous sum far beyond his ability to repay. In anger and ultimate disappointment, she decided to divorce. However, many believe this was just a legal measure to protect family assets from creditors, as their marital affection remained as strong as ever. This was proven by Dominique's insistence on staying with his wife and children despite the divorce, even securing a job at his wife's company to stay close and care for the family. And indeed, after 7 years of divorce, they officially remarried. Time passed, and their children gradually grew up, building their own homes and leaving their parents' care. When both entered retirement age, they made a bold but meaningful decision. Longing to fully enjoy their remaining years in peace and tranquility, they decided to sell their house in busy Paris to move to a peaceful countryside. On a beautiful March day, they moved to the beautiful town of Marseille in Vaucluse province, located in southeastern France. Here, with fresh air and a slow pace of life, it seemed to be the perfect destination for a peaceful retirement life. The decision to move to the countryside received enthusiastic support from all 3 children. They all saw Marseille as an ideal place for their parents' elderly years, with its pleasant moderate climate, surrounded by lush fruit orchards heavy with fruit, along with poetic, peaceful rural scenery. The slow, unhurried life there seemed designed specifically for years of rest and enjoyment. The new home quickly became a favorite destination for the entire extended family, where 3 children and 7 grandchildren frequently visited, gathering with their grandparents during warm holidays. However, an unexpected crisis struck, shattering the existing tranquility and plunging their family into an unimaginable nightmare. Amidst these seemingly peaceful days, Giselle's health began showing worrying, abnormal signs. Each morning upon waking, she frequently fell into a state of extreme exhaustion, with an empty mind and body aches, as if she had just gone through a struggle. Her figure grew increasingly gaunt, her hair fell out in large patches, and most frightening of all, her memory deteriorated severely. During this time, she often called her children with a worried voice, "I miss you all so much. Why haven't you visited Mom and Dad?" This statement increasingly alarmed everyone, as the children had just visited their parents only days before. Giselle's health condition became a common concern for the whole family. Everyone thought she might be suffering from Alzheimer's, or more seriously, dangerous diseases like cancer or brain tumors. Dominique took his wife to many hospitals, both large and small. But doctors all concluded that her health was completely normal, her brain showing no abnormal signs of tumors or illness. They could only advise her to rest more and avoid tension and stress. Unable to resolve their concerns, the fear and anxiety that constantly haunted Giselle's mind caused her weight to decrease steadily. Each time she woke up, she felt very afraid, because she couldn't remember anything that had happened the night before. She felt like she was falling into a black hole and trying to struggle out without success. She tried to recall her dreams, but besides the body aches, she couldn't remember anything. Amid existing health concerns, an even more horrifying discovery left Giselle frozen. She was diagnosed with a sexually transmitted disease. When the doctor reminded her about the importance of personal hygiene, she could only remain silent in confusion and fear. As a woman who had always been meticulous about hygiene, she couldn't understand how she had contracted this disease. Too hurt and ashamed, she decided to keep this matter secret from everyone, including her family members. She tried to hide her pain in silence. However, no matter how hard she tried, her children still noticed the unusual changes in their mother's behavior and health condition. Fortunately, whenever Giselle fell into despair, Dominique was always by her side, comforting her with sweet words. "You're just a little tired." But deep inside, Giselle understood that her problem was much more complex and serious than that. She silently sought treatment methods, while fear and feelings of helplessness increasingly clung to and haunted her mind. The deteriorating health condition had completely disrupted her daily life. Previously an independent and self-reliant woman, now Giselle no longer dared to drive or go out alone, afraid she would forget her way home. This made her increasingly dependent on her husband's help. When talking with friends, she would still feel happy and say, "I'm so lucky to have such a wonderful husband." But then fate dealt her another unexpected blow. On September 12, 2020, just after returning from a trip to southern France, Giselle received a call from the police. They informed her that Mr. Dominique had been arrested. The news about the reason for his arrest stunned her even more. Her husband had been caught secretly filming women at a convenience store in town. Faced with this truth, Giselle's first reaction was doubt and denial. In her mind, she couldn't believe this was real. How could Dominique, the man who had accompanied her for 15 years, always known as an exemplary husband and father, an honest and kind person, do such depraved things? She firmly believed that the police had made a mistake, because in her eyes, Dominique would never be someone who could harm others. But the cruel truth gradually came to light. Giselle could no longer deny when police presented irrefutable evidence of Dominique's voyeuristic behavior at multiple public places. Faced with clear evidence, Dominique only offered a weak and irresponsible excuse that he acted this way because he felt lonely during the month his wife was away. Although he was released on bail, this was only the beginning of a series of horrifying discoveries. Soon after, police discovered that, besides the recording device confiscated from Dominique's bag when he was arrested, police found many other suspicious items, leading to suspicion that he was a systematic voyeur. Police suspicions were quickly confirmed when they obtained a warrant to search Dominique's house. There they seized 2 phones, a computer, and many other data storage devices. All these devices belonged to Dominique. The next day, Giselle stayed home in a heavy state of anxiety, constantly urging the police to speed up the investigation, so her family could quickly find peace again. In her confusion, she even blamed herself for leaving her husband alone for too long until he developed deviant behaviors. Just one day later, both Giselle and Dominique received summons from the police. They were taken into separate interrogation rooms. With Giselle, the interrogation began with questions that made her extremely uncomfortable. The police wanted to know details about their married life, especially intimate matters in their bedroom. Giselle felt deeply offended and shocked. Although she knew her husband had used the excuse of lacking marital intimacy for a month to justify his voyeuristic behavior at the supermarket, she still felt the police questions were too private and inappropriate. What made her even more uncomfortable was the police's next question. They wanted to know if the couple had ever engaged in group sex or participated in spouse-swapping clubs. Upon hearing this, Giselle felt extremely embarrassed and confused. As an elderly and proper woman, she really wasn't comfortable answering such questions. She firmly denied everything and said no, never. "I've always been faithful to my husband. I can't even accept being touched by other men. How could I do such things?" At this point, the police officer stopped and showed Giselle a photograph of a bedroom scene. In the photo, a woman was sleeping on a bed with a man beside her. Giselle didn't recognize the people in the photo. She wondered why the police were showing her this photo. They asked her to look carefully at the background in the photo, particularly the bedside table, to see if it looked familiar, if this was her bedroom. Giselle looked more carefully, and realized this seemed to be her bedroom. Hearing this, the police continued by showing her a second photo. Now she was completely certain that the woman lying on the bed was her, and the setting in the photo was her bedroom. The bed with the floral pattern bedspread that she loved. But who was the strange man in the photo? Why was he lying right next to her without her knowledge? When were these photos taken? It turned out the police had discovered a mysterious folder on Dominique's computer. This folder contained thousands of photos and videos of Giselle. More specifically, scenes of her being assaulted by different men while she was unconscious. And the main purpose of the police interrogating Giselle was so they could gently inform her about the existence of these horrible photos. Later, the police revealed they had found over 20,000 such photos and videos. Dominique had organized them systematically with detailed notes about the time and date for each file. For instance, there was a folder named May 26, 2020 night, Mark Sodu, 5th time, which documented a strange man assaulting Giselle 5 consecutive times in one night. And this wasn't an isolated incident. These horrific folders were updated regularly throughout nearly a decade, from 2011 to September 2020. When confronted with this horrifying evidence, Giselle nearly collapsed completely. She firmly stated that she had absolutely no knowledge of the existence of these terrible images and videos. Her panicked and genuine reaction, along with what was recorded in the videos showing her completely motionless, without any reaction, and never waking up during the incidents, convinced the police of her testimony. Now all eyes turned to Dominique, the man Giselle had trusted completely. How could he explain these disgusting images? At the investigative agency, faced with irrefutable evidence, Dominique immediately confessed to his criminal acts. He revealed that before filming the videos, he had given his wife large amounts of sleeping pills and even anti-anxiety medication. These drugs had caused Giselle to fall into an almost unconscious state and unable to be aware of what was happening to her. And that was also the cause of her gradually declining health over many years. Thus, Dominique had known exactly the condition and cause of his wife's health problems, but still pretended not to know and continued playing the role of the perfect husband to deceive everyone. In fact, he was the one causing it all. How despicable and shameless. Dominique also admitted that initially, he only gave his wife anti-anxiety medication because he noticed it made her sleepy. Then he began gradually increasing the dosage until he was sure Giselle would be unconscious after taking it. The experiment succeeded, and he began his depraved acts with his wife. At first, he only performed these sick acts himself, the reason being that he knew his wife was traditional and would never agree to such things if she were conscious. Gradually, Dominique became increasingly perverted. He filmed videos and shared them with others who had similar interests online. It all started in an online chat room called Without His or Her Knowledge. And true to its name, the theme of this chat room was boasting about intimate acts with partners while they were unaware. Dominique was very welcomed in this chat group. He boasted in detail about how carefully he prepared and how much medication he used to make his wife unconscious. Then he actively invited other men to his house to enjoy his wife. In his testimony, he described in detail how he used to invite those men. First, he would search for suitable subjects in the online chat room. After selecting appropriate candidates, he would arrange appointments while making specific and tight plans to avoid attracting neighbors' attention. He required them to park their cars at a distance from the house and wait outside for over an hour to ensure Giselle was sound asleep. When entering the house, they had to undress in the kitchen, so Giselle wouldn't discover strange clothes in the room. They were also not allowed to wear perfume or smoke. Before touching Giselle, they had to wash their hands with warm water because he feared that if their hands were too cold, it would wake her up. He stood watching the entire process and required these men not to use condoms, and that was the reason why Giselle contracted various sexually transmitted diseases despite being very clean herself. One man revealed that he was kicked out by Dominique after about 30 minutes because Giselle showed signs of waking up. After each time, Dominique would clean his wife, carefully erasing all traces so Giselle wouldn't discover what had happened while she was sleeping. Afterward, he would post the videos he had recorded of the entire process to the chat group as an advertisement to attract participation from others. After analyzing the data on Dominique's computer, police discovered that during the 9 years from 2011 to September 2020, Giselle had been victimized 92 times. It's unimaginable that if Dominique's voyeuristic incident at the supermarket hadn't been exposed, and police hadn't found the evidence on his computer, how many more times would Giselle have been deceived and assaulted? On June 19, 2023, a 370-page report was released announcing the indictment of 51 men related to this case. Unfortunately, one man had died from cancer and thus escaped legal punishment. Police reported that most of these criminals had no prior criminal records, aged from 26 to 74, with diverse occupations ranging from civil servants, postal workers, firefighters, laborers to lawyers. Among them were some who were HIV positive. Police also stated that the actual number could be much larger, because more than 20 people were either unidentified or police couldn't find definitive evidence to charge them. At this point, many wondered why Dominique did this to his wife. Was it because he valued money over marital bonds? The police investigation revealed an even more frightening truth. Dominique's motives were not driven by financial gain. He spent his own money buying recording equipment, never charged money from his accomplices, and even meticulously erased traces from his wife's body after each depraved act. This showed that the twisted, sick nature of his psychology was the real motive for his crimes. But the most horrifying things had not yet been revealed. Dominique not only tormented his wife, but also made his own daughter and both daughters-in-law victims of his perverted desires. Police found in his computer private photos and videos secretly recording Caroline, his biological daughter, along with both daughters-in-law. With the two daughters-in-law, police only found images of them being secretly filmed while bathing. But the incident with Caroline seemed more complex. In one video, she was seen lying on a bed in a condition similar to her mother. Although there were no men in the video, Caroline believed she had also been abused by her father, because the file name of that video was Most Successful Time in Over 20 Years. However, regarding this matter, Dominique steadfastly denied his actions. The investigation continued to bring to light shocking new details. Police arrested a man from the chat group, someone considered Dominique's close friend, who had assaulted Giselle 6 times in her own home. More horrifying was the fact that Dominique had also gone to this friend's house 5 times to rape his wife, revealing an organized network of crimes between these sick individuals. In 1991, a 23-year-old real estate broker named Sophie was murdered in her apartment in the suburbs of Paris. According to the autopsy results, the victim was drugged, sexually assaulted, and then killed. Although suspecting the case was committed by a serial killer, police couldn't find enough evidence to identify the perpetrator. So the case had been forgotten for a long time. It wasn't until 2020, after comparing DNA from the 1991 crime scene with Dominique's DNA, that police discovered they matched. He was quickly charged in this case. Faced with DNA evidence, Dominique still stubbornly denied the crime. However, he confessed to another crime he had committed in 1999. Also at an apartment in suburban Paris, a 19-year-old girl working in real estate was drugged and assaulted by him. But fortunately, she managed to escape and seek help. On September 2nd, 2024, Dominique's trial began. Because the case involved many defendants, the trial was expected to last several months. At this crucial turning point, Giselle made a brave decision to publicly reveal her identity. Although initially intending to keep her personal information private, after much consideration, she realized that her story could become a source of encouragement and motivation for other victims suffering in silence. As soon as the truth about her husband's disgusting acts was revealed, Giselle acted quickly and decisively. Without hesitation, she packed her belongings and decided to end her marriage with the man who had betrayed her trust so cruelly. She also bravely faced the truth with her 3 children, telling them about all the terrible things they never suspected about their respected father. In response to their mother's straightforwardness and courage, all 3 children expressed strong support, ready to stand by their mother in this fight for justice. In court, Giselle publicly condemned her husband and demanded a public trial to expose both him and the other men involved. For 50 years, I lived with a man whom I never imagined was capable of committing these acts. Dominique tried one last time to hold on to the wife he had betrayed so cruelly. With a seemingly remorseful tone, he spoke, "I'm at fault. I regret everything I've done. Please forgive me." In response to the plea from the man who had destroyed her life, Giselle only replied with cold silence. She turned her back, stepping down from the witness stand with determination. That decisive gesture said more than any words. It was a determination to completely end the painful past, a wordless declaration that she would never forget. In court, Dominique's lawyer revealed that he had been attacked at age 9 and had witnessed adults engaging in sexual acts at age 14. These experiences had deeply affected his psychology, leading to his criminal behaviors later. Dominique's 2 daughters-in-law also testified at the trial. The elder daughter-in-law, with a choked and painful voice, shared that being secretly filmed was no longer her greatest pain. What troubled and frightened her more was the possibility that her own children had been, or could become, victims of their own grandfather. Even more shocking was when the second daughter-in-law recalled a seemingly harmless memory that now became terrifyingly chilling. She remembered Dominique inviting her son. "Let's play doctor and patient." At the time, she thought nothing of it, but now, remembering that statement, she couldn't help but shudder at the dark implications it might have contained. Faced with these accusations, Dominique strongly denied them, declaring he would never harm his grandchildren. He tried to defend himself by saying he had been a victim of abuse since childhood, so he understood that pain. However, this defense only highlighted the twisted psychology of this man, someone who had experienced the pain of being a victim, but became the perpetrator of similar harm to others, even his own family members. Dominique faces multiple charges, including rape, gang rape, and privacy violation for recording and distributing pornographic images without consent. His crimes, spanning nearly 10 years, included recruiting men online to rape his drugged wife. He stated childhood trauma and the desire to have his wife participate in partner swapping drove his behavior. It became a perversion, an addiction, Dominique said in court. Dominique's trial is still ongoing and is expected to continue until the end of 2024, reflecting the complexity and severity of the case. In each court session, a special image has left a deep impression on the public. The moment when Giselle walks out of the courtroom during breaks, welcomed by endless applause from the supporting crowd, Giselle's brave and dignified presence in court has inspired many people. From a victim of domestic violence and sexual abuse, she has risen to become a symbol of the fight against sexual violence in France. Her story is not just a personal battle for justice, but has become a beacon of hope for many other women suffering in silence. Story 6. On May 11, 2016, Li Yangjia, a Chinese student studying at Anhalt University of Applied Sciences in Dessau, Germany, prepared for her routine evening jog. After buying some groceries and storing them in her dorm room, she changed into her familiar workout clothes. Although it was 8:30 p.m., the sky was still bright as daylight due to Germany's northern latitude. After saying goodbye to her roommate, Yangjia put on her headphones and began her usual run. This was a physical activity she had maintained consistently for a long time. No matter how busy her studies were, she always made time for running. Her familiar route took her through the old town, past the museum, and through the city park. However, that evening, she hadn't run far when a woman stopped her near a nearby building. This young woman with doll-like features talked to Yangjia for about a minute. Despite appearing hesitant and uncomfortable, Yangjia ultimately agreed to follow this stranger into a nearby apartment. The next morning, Yangjia's classmate Zhou Lihong sent her a WeChat message. The two were close friends and usually met for breakfast daily. But this time, Zhou didn't receive a response from Yangjia. Instead, she got a call from Yangjia's roommate. The roommate first asked if Yangjia was with Zhou. After receiving a negative answer, he anxiously explained that Yangjia hadn't returned to her room all night. Her bedroom door was ajar, clothes were strewn on the bed, and her phone and running gear were missing. Her phone was also consistently switched off. Yangjia was known to be a well-behaved and cautious girl. During her time studying in Germany, she had limited her social circle to fellow international students at her university. Although fluent in English, her German skills were making it unlikely for her to stay out overnight voluntarily. A sense of unease quickly enveloped Yangjia's friends. They decided to report the matter to the school. The university administration immediately mobilized teachers and students to conduct a large-scale search operation. They scoured classrooms, laboratories, the library, as well as along Yangjia's usual running route and places she frequented. By 1 p.m. that day, when all the school's search efforts yielded no results, they were forced to seek police assistance. Immediately, the Daisio Police Department launched a large-scale search operation, deploying helicopters and search dogs. They conducted a comprehensive search of places where Yangjia might have appeared, focusing particularly on surrounding areas with high crime rates. At the same time, the local Chinese community quickly responded, spreading information and voluntarily joining the search team. However, despite relentless efforts for a day and a night, there was still no trace of Yangjia, causing increasing worry and confusion. On the morning of May 13th, the police tried calling Yangjia's phone and were surprised when the call connected. A man's voice came from the other end, but the call was quickly cut off. Due to the brevity of the call, the police couldn't trace its location. Around 11 a.m. that day, a construction worker on Houseman Street discovered a naked female body lying between the construction sites, temporary toilet, and some bushes. After police confirmation, the victim showed no signs of life. Through autopsy and DNA comparison, the person was identified as the missing Li Yongjia. She had multiple bone fractures, severe facial damage, and traces of another person's bodily fluids. It's hard to imagine the pain she endured before her death. Who were the perpetrators? Why did they kill Li Yongjia? Li Yongjia was born in 1990 in Jiaozhou City, Hunan Province. She came from a happy family. Her father was a police officer and her mother was a teacher. Yangjia had been a good student from a young age with a gentle personality and was the only daughter in the family. After graduating from high school, Li Yongjia was admitted to the architecture department of Hunan University of Science and Technology. After completing her undergraduate degree in 2014, she was accepted into Anhalt University of Applied Sciences in Germany with outstanding achievements. Like many Chinese families, although Li Yangjia's family wasn't wealthy, her parents still managed to send their daughter abroad, hoping she would succeed. When Li Yongjia received her admission letter, joy and hope filled the entire household. The farewell at Beijing International Airport was emotional, with her mother unable to hold back tears as she watched her daughter leave, carrying the dreams and expectations of the whole family. After Yangjia left for her studies, her parents at home eagerly awaited news of their daughter's success. However, what no one could have anticipated was that just 2 months before graduation, she would tragically pass away, leaving behind inconsolable grief for her loved ones. As soon as they received the devastating news, Yangjia's parents hurriedly packed their bags, completed the necessary procedures, and boarded a flight to Germany. On May 20th, they arrived in Dachau. The couple didn't have the courage to face their daughter's body. That evening, the entire faculty and student body of the school organized a memorial service for Li Yongjia. Her mother knelt on the ground, crying silently, while her father remained silent, deep in thought. The next day, the couple visited the apartment where their daughter had lived. Looking at the items their child had used, they felt overwhelming sorrow. Yangjia's father was an experienced criminal investigator. At his request, the police took the couple to examine the crime scene. The Dachau police detectives informed them that the area had been cordoned off. They had searched all the garbage dumps in the surrounding area and found some of Yangjia's belongings in over 110,000 pounds of trash. Upon examination, the DNA on these items matched Li Yangjia's DNA. However, the police found no related information in their database. Mr. Li pondered the events from beginning to end, feeling that something wasn't right. He walked back and forth several times from his daughter's apartment to where she was last seen. Suddenly, he realized that the location where the body was found was very close to the apartment, a place his daughter often ran past. If it were a premeditated crime, the perpetrator wouldn't be foolish enough to dump the body so close. Therefore, this seemed more like a spontaneous crime. Could the perpetrator be a neighbor living in a nearby building? Mr. Li presented his views to the police. The detectives were very surprised, saying they had never thought of this. They believed that the place where the body was dumped wasn't the initial crime scene, but likely just where the perpetrator randomly disposed of it after the crime. However, after hearing Mr. Li's analysis, the police found it very logical. So they sent people to investigate residents in the surrounding area. But after more than 10 days, they still hadn't made any breakthroughs. When the case reached a deadlock and the police were preparing to expand their search scope, a young couple came to the Dachau police station to report. They said they knew some details about the case and could help solve it. What they said next shocked everyone. The couple consisted of Sebastian F., born in 1996, and Zinnia L., born in 1997. They had 3 children, 2 of whom were with the current boyfriend. Although both were over 20 years old, they had never attended university and hadn't even completed Germany's 12 years of compulsory basic education. With no income, they lived in an apartment rented by their parents. Notably, this apartment was right next to where Yang Jie's body was found. Sebastian revealed to the police that on the evening of May 10th, the day before Yang Jie went missing, he was at home watching cartoons. Meanwhile, his girlfriend Zinnia was walking outside when she happened to meet Yang Jie jogging. Finding her attractive, she asked if Yang Jie would like to participate in a threesome game. Surprisingly, according to their statement, Yang Jie agreed immediately and went with Zinnia to Sebastian's apartment. They claimed to have had a good time together, and when leaving, Yang Jie even said she'd like to meet again. Sebastian said that after hearing the girl had died, they worried the police would find their DNA on the body and cause unnecessary trouble, so they came specifically to explain the situation. The Dessau Police Department opened an investigation based on this lead. Upon examination, the bodily fluids found in Yang Jie's body indeed belonged to Sebastian. Given the significant social impact of this case, the police immediately took the couple into custody as a precautionary measure. Up to this point, the Dessau police's handling of the case seemed normal, but the events that followed were somewhat strange. On the afternoon of May 24th, Prosecutor Falk Pittman held a press conference. He announced that 2 suspects had been arrested, but whether they were the perpetrators still needed further investigation. However, the information the police had was that the victim had voluntarily participated in a threesome with the 2 suspects before her death. Such an irresponsible press conference not only damaged Yang Jie's reputation, but also misled public opinion. The police not only failed to verify the suspect's statements, but also deliberately concealed clear blood traces in the suspect's apartment. These blood stains were scattered on the floor, sofa, walls, heater, and ceiling. Yang Jie's parents were devastated. They couldn't believe that even after death their daughter was subject to such baseless speculation. Teachers and students at school responded that Yang Jie was a well-behaved girl, very naive in matters of love. Her daily life revolved only around school and the dormitory, and she had never stayed out overnight. Moreover, Yang Jie wasn't fluent in German. How could such a girl do such things with 2 strangers who didn't speak her language? After this absurd press conference, a friend of Li Yang Jie came to the Dessau Police Department. He said that on the evening of May 10th, he had met Li Yang Jie at the central station, and they had exchanged greetings. Another friend could corroborate this, and the time this friend mentioned coincided with the period when the 2 suspects falsely accused Yang Jie. Clearly, the couple was lying. So why did the police release such an unsubstantiated statement? Were they trying to cover up something? In fact, the police's initial investigation direction was wrong from the start. If Mr. Li hadn't insisted on searching the surrounding area, causing the suspects to feel pressured and voluntarily confess, who knows when this case would have been solved. The day after the press conference, some Chinese and German media outlets reported unverified information. Yang Jie was suspected by many people who didn't know the truth. In a short time, the incident caused a public uproar. The case quickly spread, and soon most Chinese international students in Germany stood up in protest. They believed that the incomplete information released by the prosecutor had misled public opinion and violated the honor of the deceased. The police investigation was ineffective, slow in collecting and transferring key evidence, showing signs of covering up for the criminals. As public opinion spread wider, the case continued to be magnified. Finally, the media did something good. They dug up more secrets. It turned out that Sebastian's mother was a high-ranking official in the Dessau Police Department, and his stepfather was the chief of the Dessau Police Department. Meanwhile, Yang Jie's case had always been handled by the Dessau Police Department. This information inevitably led to speculation. However, what angered people more was that the police had deliberately concealed a fact. This man named Sebastian had been involved in over 40 cases, including arson, theft, and harassment of women. But these crimes seemed to have no impact on his life. Until he turned himself in, Sebastian had been living freely outside the law. The reason, I think, is self-evident. By May 2016, in addition to students studying in Germany, local Chinese organizations and many German citizens had joined the group demanding justice for Yang Jie, calling for the Dessau police to severely punish the criminals and restore justice for the deceased. Under increasing pressure, the authorities were forced to announce the suspension of Sebastian's mother and stepfather and handed the case over to the Halle Police Department. The investigation started anew. Yang Jie's father recounted that on May 21st, the suspect's stepfather, who was also the chief of the Dessau Police Department, had taken him to examine the crime scene. That day in front of the apartment, Mr. Li had seen Sebastian, but at that time he didn't know that the person who took him to see the scene and the man in the apartment were family. In addition, witnesses claimed to have seen Sebastian's parents leaving the apartment with him, carrying large and small garbage bags. They seemed to be moving out, and this moment was on the night Mr. requested the police to investigate the residence. Later, upon inspection, Sebastian's apartment had undergone several thorough cleanings, but over 100 blood stains were still found in an empty room, even reaching the 10-foot-high ceiling. According to neighbors, on the night of the crime, they had heard a woman's screams coming from Sebastian's apartment for a long time. But they all knew the couple had some special preferences, so they didn't pay much attention. Subsequently, the Halle police found a surveillance video provided by the owner of an antique shop on the first floor of Sebastian's apartment building. At 9:20 p.m. on May 11th, when Yang Jia was jogging by, she was stopped by Xenia. The two talked for about a minute, with Xenia appearing anxious, as if begging for help. Yang Jia hesitated for a moment, before entering the apartment with her. At 2:30 a.m., Sebastian left the apartment, wandering around outside as if searching for something, but quickly returned to the apartment. Yang Jia never came out again. At this point, the case seemed quite clear and appeared to be nearing resolution. But things were not that simple. First, Sebastian's parents claimed that the move had been planned in advance because there was mold in the house, harmful to health. But quickly, the landlord exposed their lie. Upon inspection, the house was quite clean and free of mold. The landlord stated that after the incident, Sebastian had paid 6 months' rent in advance and requested that no one else be allowed to rent. The police learned through telecom company records that on May 12th, the day after Yang Jia went missing, Sebastian had called his mother more than 10 times, far exceeding the normal number of calls. Even just before going to the police station to turn himself in, he had a 40-minute phone conversation with his mother. On November 25th, in the trial for Yang Jia's case officially began. Sebastian's parents hired experienced lawyers and instructed the two defendants to cover their faces with documents, use their right to remain silent reasonably, not say a word, and let the lawyers answer on their behalf. The defense strongly pointed out first that the most important evidence in this case, the surveillance video provided by the antique shop owner, was problematic because the surveillance camera in the store didn't capture footage of Yang Jia being harmed, and the outdoor surveillance footage was of a public area, related to personal privacy, and couldn't be made public. The court also couldn't accept it as evidence. In other words, this video could only prove that Yang Jia had entered the apartment, but no one knew if she had come out, because the public area video couldn't be made public. Whether it was recorded or not was no longer important. Faced with such cunning defense, the prosecution presented more evidence. A few days before Yang Jia went missing, Sebastian had searched on his computer for keywords like Asian women, bondage, beating, etc. And in the early morning of the day Li Yongjie was murdered, he had searched for content related to how to hide a body. Additionally, in the phones of the two suspects, the police found a large number of pornographic videos. Combining the computer search history, phone videos, DNA test results, and the antique shop surveillance camera, each piece of evidence from the prosecution had undeniable reasons. Faced with this evidence, perhaps realizing her unfavorable situation, the female suspect, Xenia, finally wavered. In the 10th court session, she finally revealed the truth about the case. Xenia said that she had been abused by her stepfather since childhood, so she grew up with very low self-esteem. After meeting Sebastian, she extremely indulged him and satisfied all his strange requests. If he was slightly displeased, she would be beaten. On the night of the incident, Sebastian told her to find someone to play a game with them. So she had to deceive Yang Jia, saying there was a big box in the house that needed help moving, hoping she could assist. After the two entered the apartment, Sebastian quickly rushed out to control Yang Jia, followed by a night of torture. During that time, whenever Yang Jia showed any resistance, she would be violently beaten by him. After everything was over, Xenia went upstairs to shower, but when she came down, she saw the floor covered in blood. She asked her boyfriend what had happened, and Sebastian said Yang Jia was dead. Xenia cried and asked why they didn't let her go, and he said it was because she didn't obey. Finally, they put Yang Jia's body in a trash can and threw it out of the second-floor window late at night when no one was around. When Sebastian went outside and walked around the apartment, it was to check if Yang Jia's body had been well hidden. Xenia's lawyer emphasized that due to long-term oppression by her boyfriend, along with her unfortunate past, and the fact that Xenia was only 19 years old when the incident occurred, her mind was not yet mature, so they hoped the judge could reduce her sentence. However, is this the truth? Was Zinnia really just forced to participate in the crime? Regarding Zinnia's testimony, the prosecutor argued that this was because she realized she was facing a murder charge, so to mitigate her punishment, she blamed everything on her boyfriend and her unfortunate childhood. Without Zinnia, Yongjia wouldn't have been deceived. Moreover, after the incident, Zinnia cooperated with her boyfriend to report to the police station, trying to conceal the truth. Most importantly, the forensic report showed that Yongjia was still clutching a handful of Zinnia's hair, proving that the two had struggled, contradicting Zinnia's claim that she was also a victim. However, the most puzzling thing was that even at this point, Sebastian's lawyer could boldly tell the judge that his client also had psychological and mental issues, even more severe than Zinnia's, hoping for a reduced sentence as well. On August 4, 2017, after 35 court sessions, the DCO court declared Sebastian guilty of murder and assault, along with several other charges, sentencing him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Zinnia, due to her confession, was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison. The families of the two criminals were ordered to pay 60,000 euros, approximately $71,000 in emotional damages to Lee Yongjia's parents. Due to lack of concrete evidence of Sebastian's parents covering up for their son, the court declared them not guilty. In Germany, a country that has abolished the death penalty, life imprisonment without parole is the highest punishment. After the sentencing, Sebastian declared his dissatisfaction and appealed. Zinnia also appealed, claiming that she had never been loved since childhood and was later controlled by her boyfriend. Still feeling the sentence was too heavy. However, the appeals of both were rejected and the court upheld the original verdict. Although both criminals have been punished by law, Lee Yongjia will never be able to return home. We hope she can rest in peace in heaven. At the same time, we hope that everyone will always remain vigilant to protect their own safety and that of those around them.